Chapter 1965 Retreat. Once Great Emperor Colored Glaze understood that, she made up her mind. Go away! Great Emperor Colored Glaze bellowed and the chilliness in her body flowed out. The boundless chilliness substantiated before her and formed 3 ice dragons. Every single one of the 3 ice dragons was 10,000 miles in length and they gave out billowing auras. Any one of them could easily kill an emperor god. Then, as Great Emperor Colored Glaze controlled the 3 ice dragons, they let out a bellow and instantly plunged at Jian. Dealing with 3 ice dragons, Jian didn't act recklessly but launched a full hit to match him evenly. However, just as he prepared to deal with the 3 ice dragons, Great Emperor Colored Glaze took a huge step back. Then, she turned to charge at Jian Wushuang. A terrifying chilliness and cold aura instantly covered Jian Wushuang. Great Emperor Colored Glaze's eyes, which were fixed upon Jian Wushuang, turned cold too. Looking at Great Emperor Colored Glaze charging at him, Jian Wushuang's eyes dilated in shock, but he didn't panic. He flipped his hand and there was a bronze mirror that let out an ancient aura in his hand, the 5-Fire Godly Spirit Mirror. He had just gotten the 5-Fire Godly Spirit Mirror not too long ago and it was his first time displaying its power outside. Rumble. Boundless divine power flowed into the bronze mirror and the 5 godly spirits in the bronze mirror were woken up by Jian Wushuang. Then they plunged out. Tall dark shadows substantiated in the void. There was a total of 5. Plus, all the 5 dark shadows were huge and every single one was more than 5 meters tall. They gave out chilly aura as though they were from Acheron. 5 godly spirits, stop her! At Jian Wushuang's command, the 5 dark shadows lifted their heads at the same time. In their eye sockets, there weren't eyeballs. There was only dancing ghostly fire. That very moment, the ghostly fire was churning and it seemed rather impatient. Punk, 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 punk. The 5 godly spirits moved simultaneously. In the first instance, they formed a 5-fire formation. Once they appeared before Great Emperor Colored Glaze, the power of the 5 godly spirits and 5-fire formation exploded. After a loud bang, the 5 godly spirits took a step back at the same time. However, Great Emperor Colored Glaze was stopped. What's that? Great Emperor Colored Glaze looked at the 5 godly spirits that had appeared in front of her in shock. She could tell that the 5 godly spirits weren't war puppets, nor were they real. They should have existed in a unique way. Plus, the fighting power of each godly spirit wasn't too strong and they should be a distance from a great emperor. However, when the 5 godly spirits joined forces with the aid of the formation, the pressure that they brought to her was not weaker than an ordinary great emperor's. In terms of power and strength, they might even be stronger than Jian Yi had been previously. Jian Wushuang has such powerful treasure? Great Emperor Colored Glaze couldn't help but steal a glance at the bronze mirror in Jian Wushuang's hand. She knew that the 5 godly spirits had popped out from the bronze mirror. The 5 godly spirits had joined forces and possessed the fighting power of a great emperor. Die! The 5 godly spirits were raging with anger. They were refined into spirits via brutal methods. All their lives, they wouldn't be able to shake it off. To them, it was absolutely more painful than death. Over the years, they had naturally accumulated boundless hatred and cruelty. The hatred was taken out on their opponents. The 5 godly spirits formed 5-fire formation and fought with Great Emperor Colored Glaze. At the same time, Jian Yi had already taken care of the 3 ice dragons and he was charging at Great Emperor Colored Glaze. When they joined forces, it equaled the fighting power of 2 great emperors. Although Great Emperor Colored Glaze was on the 6th place on Heaven and Earth's Supreme Ranking list, she was considered the stronger one among great emperors. However, she wasn't capable enough to fight 2 great emperors at the same time. Plus, Jian Yi and the 5 godly spirits displayed fighting power that wasn't weak. In a short while, Great Emperor Colored Glaze was already suppressed. D***. Great Emperor Colored Glaze looked cold as there was fire burning in her eyes. However, no matter how angry she was, fighting power was on display. She was really not capable enough to match evenly with Jian Yi and the 5 godly spirits. Even under Jian Yi and the 5 godly spirits' pressure, She wanted to find a chance to attack Jian Wushuang, but she had failed to do so. Colored glaze, do you want to continue to fight? Jian Wushuang stood in the void nearby as he humphed coldly. B** starred. Great Emperor Colored Glaze was angry, but she couldn't do anything to Jian Wushuang. Humph. You're so stubborn. You really think that I can't make you, a great emperor, stay? Jian Wushuang's voice became cold. Don't forget that my sword servant and I cultivated the secret skill of Star Palace. Secret skill of Star Palace? Great Emperor Colored Glaze stunned. She naturally knew about the secret skill of Star Palace. She also knew that Jian Wushuang had cultivated the third volume of Secret Skill of Star Palace successfully. Back then, with that one move, he had wiped out almost 100 Almighties from Almighty's alliance with one hit. His power had already reached the extreme limit of a great emperor. In Eternal Chaotic World, besides Emperor Bai and the mysterious Emperor 13, they reckoned no one could perform such an attack. Now, she was against Jian Yi and 5 godly spirits. She was already suppressed entirely. By then, if Jian Wushuang were to attack again, attack at that level, her life might be threatened even though she was a great emperor. I will count to 3. If you don't retreat, I'll immediately launch my killer hit. Don't think I'm joking. Jian Wushuang's voice was low. 1, 2. Jian Wushuang had yet to count to 3. Great Emperor Colored Glaze, who was fighting with Jian Yi and 5 godly spirits ferociously, suddenly retreated. As she retreated, her cold voice resounded in the universe. Jian Wushuang, I am defeated. But don't be too happy just yet. You think you'll be able to protect Green Fire World on your own? You are dreaming. Just you wait. In no time I will return. Her voice continued to reverberate. Then, Great Emperor Colored Glaze's body disappeared at the end of the sky. In the void in front of Green Fire World, Jian Wushuang stood. His face grew grave when he heard what Great Emperor Colored Glaze said. He hadn't lied earlier. If he were to perform his trump card without scruples, he was confident that he could make Great Emperor Colored Glaze stay forever. However, there was no use if she stayed. The secret of Green Fire World would be exposed. Even if he killed Great Emperor Colored Glaze then, there would be other Great Emperor or experts who would come. He might as well save the final trump card to deal with the upcoming danger. Plus, a Great Emperor expert was associated with many. Anyone's pass would stir a great commotion and inflict a great outcome. Chapter 1966 3 Great Emperors. Although I forced Great Emperor Colored Glaze to back off for now, in no time, Great Emperor Colored Glaze will definitely bring other experts along again. She might even lead all the experts from various forces in Eternal Chaotic World over. Jian Wushuang's face grew grave. Green Fire World, its value was really unbelievable. When Emperor God Xie Xen had first discovered Green Fire World and only find out briefly about Green Fire World, he determined that Green Fire World had the potential to become another powerful sanctuary. But in actual fact, the potential of Green Fire World was far beyond what Emperor God Xie Xen and Sir God Shui Dao had imagined. Such a place, even Sanctuary Alliance would care about. Forget about the experts from various forces. As for Jian Wushuang, he naturally wanted to protect Green Fire World alone and not let various forces in Sanctuary Alliance carve it up. Hence, he was destined to go against the entire Eternal Chaotic World. Regardless, Green Fire World is my hometown, it is my root. As long as I am alive, I will not allow anyone to take a share of it. Jian Wushuang clenched his hands tightly and he had already made up his mind. In the void near Green Fire World, swoosh, Great Emperor Colored Glaze's figure appeared again. At that very moment, there was coldness on her enchanting face and she didn't look good at all. Next to Great Emperor Colored Glaze, Emperor God Shi Yu and Sir God Shui Dao stood politely. The two of you, keep watch of Green Fire World from today onwards. Watch their every movement, Great Emperor Colored Glaze commanded. Yes, Emperor God Shi Yu and Sir God Shui Dao nodded. Great Emperor Colored Glaze's figure turned illusionary and vanished into thin air. Emperor God Shi Yu looked calm at the sight, but Sir God Shui Dao looked curious. I never expected that Great Emperor God Colored Glaze wouldn't do anything to Jian Wushuang when she attacked personally. She was forced to retreat? Sir God Shuedao was surprised. He knew Jian Wushuang's reputation and he also knew of Jian Wushuang's battle achievement. However, these battle achievements weren't enough to fight with the Great Emperor. But then, Great Emperor Colored Glaze left. She had definitely wanted to invite other Great Emperor experts to attack together. However, even if a few Great Emperors joined forces, I'm afraid they could only force Jian Wushuang to hand out Green Fire World. As for killing Jian Wushuang, I reckon there is no one who dares to do so, Sir God Shuedao thought. In the beginning, he had really thought Great Emperor Colored Glaze would kill Jian Wushuang to take revenge on his behalf. However, he understood from the conversation between Great Emperor Colored Glaze and Jian Wushuang that Great Emperor Colored Glaze had scruples with the mysterious expert behind Jian Wushuang, Emperor 13. She didn't have the guts to kill Jian Wushuang for real. Even though Jian Wushuang had humiliated her on the spot. He had called her an old woman and told her to leave, but Great Emperor Colored Glaze had only wanted to teach him a lesson. In other words, Great Emperor Colored Glaze had only pretended to promise him from the very beginning. As Great Emperor Colored Glaze had scruples with Emperor 13, the other Great Emperors that she invited should be the same as well. To kill Jian Wushuang for real, Great Emperor Colored Glaze and the Emperor Gods that she was going to invite wouldn't do. It seems that there is only one final move to take if I really want Sword Emperor to be killed for Senior. Sir God Shuedao thought coldly. He didn't react much, so Emperor God Shiryu by his side couldn't see anything different in him. In the vast void on ancient battlefield, Great Emperor Colored Glaze floated in silence. Soon, a dark figure plunged over. The dark figure belonged to Abysmal Saint Master. Colored Glaze, what's the hurry? Abysmal Saint Master appeared before Great Emperor Colored Glaze. Abysmal Saint Master rushed to the ancient battlefield at the first instant. During the 90 years of wandering in the ancient battlefield, he had really obtained some opportunities but not many. At that moment, he had yet to receive any opportunity that would allow him to improve his power tremendously. His power had yet to recover to his peak by then. I look for you, naturally there's a good deal. Great Emperor Colored Glaze looked at Abysmal Saint Master and immediately briefly told him about Green Fire World. Great Emperor Colored Glaze said, and Abysmal Saint Master's gaze became sharp. The ancient battlefield nurtured a big world? Abysmal Saint Master was astonished. Green Fire World does exist, but it's a pity that Jian Wushuang is there. I originally wanted to attack and conquer Green Fire World. But in the end, I was forced to retreat. I have no choice but to look for you, Great Emperor Colored Glaze explained. Jian Wushuang? Why is this boy everywhere? Abysmal Saint Master's gaze was cold. To Jian Wushuang, he harbored murderous intention. If I'm not mistaken, Green Fire World should be Jian Wushuang's hometown, where his roots are. The reason why his cultivation speed is so shocking and why he is so talented, it should be related to Green Fire World, Great Emperor Colored Glaze said. That's right. Jian Wushuang is too eye-catching. I reckon he is much more brilliant than Emperor Bai was back then. Such top genius would be considered unbelievable in the first era, let alone the second era. I think only Green Fire World could nurture such impressive genius. This boy is lucky that he could be born in such a place. Abysmal Saint Master clenched his hand and turned to Great Emperor Colored Glaze by his side. Colored Glaze, you came to look for me to join forces with me to fight Jian Wushuang, right? Yes. Great Emperor Colored Glaze nodded. Jian Wushuang is Green Fire World's biggest reliance. If we want to conquer Green Fire World, we have to get rid of Jian Wushuang first. According to what you said, there was a great emperor with Jian Wushuang and he has a treasure that could control 5 dark shadows that possess the fighting power of a great emperor if forces join. On top of that, he himself has trump cards to hand. With such fighting power, even if I were to work together with you during my peak time, we might not stand a chance, Abysmal Saint Master said. Great Emperor Colored Glaze's gaze grew dim. That was true. Although Abysmal Saint Master and her were both powerful great emperors, Abysmal Saint Master had yet to recover from his injury completely. With the two of them joining forces, they could at most be evenly matched with Jian Wushuang. Even though they had the upper hand, it wasn't enough. How about this? Let's wait for a while. Let me ask another person, Abysmal Saint Master said. All right, Great Emperor Colored Glaze nodded. Abysmal Saint Master immediately sent a message. The two great emperors waited in the void for a while. Very soon, the third great emperor joined them. With purple robes, a lazy look and a middle-aged appearance, he looked rather gentle. The purple-robed lazy middle-aged man was Great Emperor Zisu in 5th place on Heaven and Earth's supreme ranking list. Chapter 1967 known to all. Zisu, it's really you? Great Emperor Colored Glaze looked at Great Emperor Zisu in shock. From what she knew, Great Emperor Ziyu had always been taking an indifferent attitude in fighting for fame and fortune. Like ranking on Heaven and Earth's supreme ranking list, regardless of if he was on the 5th place or the last place, he didn't care. He hardly fought and he didn't care much about Sanctuary Alliance. He could be said to be a great emperor who was aloof. However, Great Emperor Zisu rushed over. I never expected Great Emperor Zisu, who is widely acknowledged as aloof, would be interested in Green Fire World as well, Great Emperor Colored Glaze sneered. A big world that is nurtured by the ancient battlefield. It's not strange that I am interested in it, Great Emperor Zisu smiled. Humph, don't think that I don't know that you are not interested in Green Fire World but Jian Wushuang. Abysmal Saint Master looked at Great Emperor Zisu and there was a strange look. Regardless of if I am interested in Green Fire World or Jian Wushuang, as long as our goal is the same, it will work, right? Great Emperor Zisu smiled. That's right. Green Fire World is very unusual. How could Jian Wushuang conquer such a world with boundless possibilities alone? The three of us might as well conquer Green Fire World first. Then, when the others discover the world, we can discuss then. As long as the three of us take hold of Green Fire World first, the three of us will definitely receive the most benefits, Great Emperor Colored Glaze said. That's right. So, let's not delay any further. Let's depart now, Abysmal Saint Master said. Great Emperor Zisu smiled faintly. The three Great Emperor immediately departed. However, it was not long after the three Great Emperors departed. They still had a fair distance to reach Green Fire World. A piece of news was spreading among experts in Eternal Chaotic World like wildfire. The news was about Green Fire World's existence. Green Fire World, that was nurtured by the ancient battlefield and had great potential. At the same time, it was also the biggest treasure in the entire ancient battlefield. The moment the news spread, the three Great Emperors who were on the way to Green Fire World found out immediately. ****. The news about Green Fire World has already spread. Abysmal Saint Master's face grew grave and he reprimanded Great Emperor Colored Glaze. Colored Glaze, what's going on? I thought only you knew about Green Fire World. I never said that I was the first who found Green Fire World. Great Emperor Colored Glaze refuted coldly. The first who found out was Emperor God Xie Exen and he was killed by Jian Wushuang long ago. As for the news, it was given to me by a Sir God from Colored Glaze Sanctuary who just broke through not long ago. He was Emperor God Xie Zins Jr. He told me about Green Fire World and the condition was for me to kill Jian Wushuang on his behalf. I agreed with him on the surface. But now, he has found out that I can't kill Jian Wushuang. Hence, he naturally has to figure out other ways. It is normal that he would spread the news. You knew that he would announce the news to the public. Why didn't you kill him directly? Abysmal Saint Master asked coldly. Abysmal, do you think I am as despicable as you? Great Emperor Colored Glaze teased. Plus, I can guarantee that he didn't keep his guard up. If he were to inform the others long ago and hide, so what? The news would spread even sooner if I were to kill him. Although the news spread, at least we have the upper hand. Colored Glaze is right. Zisu by the side spoke too. The big world on the ancient battlefield would be found sooner or later. There's no way to hide it. However, compared to the others, the three of us have gotten a head start. It's good enough. Abysmal Saint Master heard but didn't speak further. The three of them immediately sped up and rushed to Green Fire World. Then, in Eternal Chaotic World and on the ancient battlefield, there was a great commotion. A big world? The ancient battlefield nurtured a big world? The big world is located right at the core of the ancient battlefield. The spiritual influence of heaven and earth was the strongest there. If we were to be able to cultivate there is limitless possibilities. Green Fire World really carries limitless possibilities. Go, hurry up and go. A big world that is nurtured by the ancient battlefield. I wonder how it looks internally. Countless experts were shaken by the news and made their way to Green Fire World. Not only experts from human territories but also experts of special tribes all rushed to Green Fire World at the first instant when they heard the news. Green Fire World was everyone's focus. It was everyone's focus. However, when Sir God Shuedao spread the news, he brought up Green Fire World, but he not Jian Wushuang. He knew that if the higher-ups in Sanctuary Alliance were to find out that Green Fire World was controlled by Jian Wushuang, the higher-ups in Sanctuary Alliance would definitely find a way to message Jian Wushuang for him to hand out Green Fire World proactively. Regardless of the threats or temptations, Jian Wushuang might be forced to give in if he had no alternative. However, as long as Jian Wushuang had a string of hope and didn't hand over Green Fire World, experts from various forces would charge there altogether. Jian Wushuang might not have the time to regret then. In Green Fire World, although Jian Wushuang was in his secret room, the movement in Eternal Chaotic World and the ancient battlefield, he received detailed information from Lineage of Star. It is widespread now? Jian Wushuang squinted his eyes, but he wasn't surprised. He knew that as long as the ancient battlefield was found out, it would be impossible to hide Green Fire World. Then, all experts from various forces in Eternal Chaotic World were shaken by the news and they were on their way to Green Fire World. Green Fire World was enduring unprecedented pressure. Until now, the higher-ups in Sanctuary Alliance had yet to get in touch with me. It seems that the person who spread the news only spoke of Green Fire World but never mentioned me. Jian Wushuang took a deep breath. The surrounding battlefield, the opportunities contained on the battlefield, take them if you want. However, Green Fire World is my route. No one should even think about touching it. That's my bottom line. I hope that you don't force me to then. Otherwise, I can only make that move. There was an intense light shimmering in Jian Wushuang's eyes. In Green Fire World, besides himself, there was another trump card. That was the strongest trump card. The final trump card. Jian Wushuang definitely wouldn't use the trump card unless he reached the final stage. If Jian Wushuang were to be cornered, he absolutely wouldn't hesitate to use it. At the worst, they'd fight at the risk of mutual destruction. Chapter 1968 Force. Just as all experts from various forces in Eternal Chaotic World were shaken by the news about Green Fire World. On the ancient battlefield, in an underground ruin not too far away from Green Fire World. In the underground ruin, there was an underground palace. The underground palace was huge and the interior was mysterious and unfathomable. An elder in a gold robe shuttled through the underground palace. The elder was an ordinary Sir God from Emperor's Sword sect. He had found the existence of underground palace by sheer luck. After he found it, he had immediately started to explore to find the opportunities within. However, over the path, he didn't see any opportunity at all until he reached the depths of the underground palace. Huh! The elder in the gold robe was surprised. He saw that there was a figure seated on the empty land in front of him. No wonder there isn't an opportunity. It turns out that someone found the underground palace before I did. The elder in the gold robe glanced at the figure on the empty land with envy in his eyes. There were opportunities on the ancient battleground. But as there were more people started to wander around, it was normal that many of the opportunities were taken. The elder in the gold robe flashed a bitter smile, then he turned to leave. But suddenly, the figure that was seated on the empty land suddenly opened her eyes. Her pair of eyes were extremely brilliant, just like gemstones. At the same time, she slowly stood up. Her face was beautiful and her body was enchanting. She was in a tight red robe which appeared to be extremely captivating. No doubt, she was a beautiful woman by which any man would be captivated and tempted. However, as the enchanting woman in the red robe stood up, there was a terrifying aura. The terrifying aura covered the elder in the gold robe. The elder in the gold robe was a Sir God. However, under such an aura, he revealed an unprecedentedly horrified expression and he was shivering in fear. The elder in the gold robe took a deep breath and he bowed politely. I am Jian Luo from Emperor Sword Sect. Emperor Sword Sect? The enchanting woman in the red robe was surprised but she never spoke. However, she took a huge stride as she walked to the elder in the gold robe. As she walked over, the brilliance in the enchanting woman's eyes became stronger. I'll ask you some questions. Answer me honestly. The enchanting woman in the red robe finally walked next to the elder in the gold robe. Yes, the elder in the gold robe had an absent look. No one could tell if he was in phantasmagoria or in a special state. In a short while, the enchanting woman in the red robe found out about things that she'd like to know from the elder in the gold robe. The ancient battlefield was found by the cultivators from this era? The enchanting woman in the red robe squinted her eyes. As the ancient battlefield is found, Green Fire World was definitely found as well. I wonder how Jian Wushuang is going to deal with it? With a playful smile, the enchanting woman in the red robe moved and flew towards Green Fire World. Not long after she had left, the elder in the gold robe came back to reality. What happened? What happened to me earlier? Where's the Mr. just now? The elder in the gold robe looked lost, and he had no idea what had happened earlier. Outside Green Fire World, Great Emperor Colored Glaze, Abysmal Saint Master and Great Emperor Zisu, the three Great Emperors had arrived. Looking at the big world in front of them, Abysmal Saint Master and Great Emperor Zisu couldn't help but sigh. Jian Wushuang in Green Fire World had naturally noticed the three Great Emperors. Swoosh, swoosh. There were two loud air-piercing sounds. Jian Wushuang and Jian Yi came out from Green Fire World and came before the three Great Emperors. Jian Wushuang, I said earlier that I would return in no time. Great Emperor Colored Glaze looked cold as she glared at Jian Wushuang. Jian Wushuang only glanced at Great Emperor Colored Glaze but didn't bother talking to her at all. As for Abysmal Saint Master, he had originally shared great resentment with Abysmal Saint Master. During the war in Lineage of Star back then, Abysmal Saint Master had been determined to kill him. Fortunately, Emperor 13 had taken action. Otherwise, most likely, he would have died back then. It was normal that Abysmal Saint Master came to look for him again. Then, Jian Wushuang's gaze was fixed upon the last Great Emperor Zisu. He also knew that Great Emperor Colored Glaze would get some help. It was within his expectations that he would invite one or two other Great Emperors, but he had never guessed that she would invite Great Emperor Zisu. Jian Wushuang knew about Great Emperor Zisu. He was a cold man. As long as the others didn't find trouble in him, he hardly took action against anyone. He was considered mild-tempered. Although he had never met Great Emperor Zisu before, they were connected. Back then, Jian Wushuang wanted to carry out his promise with real god Wu Bei and kill King Demon Heart. King Demon Heart had once sent a message to Great Emperor Zisu to ask for help. But then, Great Emperor Zisu hadn't appeared or stopped Jian Wushuang. It could be considered a favor to Jian Wushuang. But then, Great Emperor Zisu, can you do me a favor again? I would be extremely grateful, Jian Wushuang said. Sword Emperor, I'm sorry. Green Fire World has associated greatly with everything else. So, Great Emperor Zisu had yet to finish his sentence. Jian Wushuang, don't have any unrealistic thoughts. I advise you to hand over Green Fire World directly. Then, we won't attack, Abysmal Saint Master said coldly. Jian Wushuang stole a glance at Abysmal Saint Master, then scoffed, I thought who was it? It is Abysmal Saint Master. But, have you recovered completely? Abysmal Saint Master's face stunned. 12,000 years ago, in the war in Lineage of Star, he had been at the brink of death because of Emperor 13. The reason why Emperor 13 hadn't killed him was merely that he wasn't powerful enough to. That was absolutely humiliating to Abysmal Saint Master. Humph, you were nearly killed by Emperor 13 back in Lineage of Star. Now, you have the guts to come here again. Abysmal Saint Master, you really have guts. Aren't you worried that Emperor 13 will take action against you again? Jian Wushuang humphed coldly. Abysmal Saint Master quivered, then he clenched his teeth and said, Jian Wushuang, Don't think bringing up Emperor 13 can scare me. Back then when we were in Lineage of Star, I could tell that although Emperor 13 saved you, I reckon you don't even know why he would do that yourself. In other words, you and he aren't that close. It is because of a certain reason he didn't wish for you to die, that's why he saved you. In other words, as long as I don't kill you, Emperor 13 won't reveal himself. I only want Greenfire World. As for if you are going to die, it doesn't matter. As long as I don't kill you. Chapter 1969 Fight a Pitch Battle. Abysmal Saint Master was still fearful of the mysterious expert Emperor 13. At least, before he was confident enough to deal with Emperor 13, he absolutely wouldn't dare to kill Jian Wushuang. However, he thought that as long as he didn't try to kill Jian Wushuang, Emperor 13 wouldn't surface. Let's not waste time with him. Seize the time and suppress him directly. Let's talk after we conquer Greenfire World, Great Emperor Colored Glaze said. Abysmal Saint Master and Great Emperor Zi Su nodded simultaneously. The aura of the three Great Emperor experts immediately spread around. Great Emperor Colored Glaze's chilliness soared and froze the surrounding void. Abysmal Saint Master was as dark as usual, boundless darkness without any light. Great Emperor Zi Su was purely imaginary. He made people feel that he was like a cloud that was floating in the air. Swoosh, swoosh, swoosh. The three of them took action at the same time. Jian Wushuang's eyes dilated in shock. Then he took out a token. The token belonged to Emperor Bai. Mr. Emperor Bai, Jian Wushuang sent a message at his fastest possible speed. As for how long it would take until Emperor Bai reply his message, Jian Wushuang had no idea either. However, he had to block everyone outside of Greenfire World before that. It naturally included the three great emperors in front of him. Abysmal Saint Master, Great Emperor Zi Su and Great Emperor Colored Glaze were in the 3rd, 5th and 6th place respectively. They were all powerful great emperors. Theoretically, their strengths are just like their ranking indicated. However, Abysmal Saint Master was severely injured by Emperor 13 and he has yet to recover fully. Hence, among the three he was the weakest while Great Emperor Zi Su was the strongest, Jian Wushuang thought to himself. Then he made up his mind. He flipped his hand and 5 fire godly spirit mirrors appeared. He let the divine power flow into the 5 tall godly spirits in the universe. The moment the 5 godly spirits appeared, the surrounding void immediately became cold. Jian Yi, you are best at manipulation of power of spacetime. You keep Great Emperor Zi Su occupied. 5 godly spirits, hold Great Emperor Colored Glaze back. As for Abysmal Saint Master, he'll take care of him. After Jian Wushuang commanded, Jian Yi and the 5 godly spirits took action. Jian Wushuang also drew his Blood Mountain sword at the first instance and there was sword intention billowing. At the same time he revealed 8 heads and 16 arms. He immediately charged at Abysmal Saint Master. Both parties immediately collided directly. Great Emperor Zi Su was the strongest at the scene and he was very skillful. His figure was vague and insubstantial. However, Jian Yi, who was in charge, dealt with him and could manipulate power of spacetime far better than everyone else. Although he was weaker, he definitely wouldn't be defeated in a short time. The 5 fire formation formed by the 5 godly spirits was powerful. Great Emperor Colored Glaze already experienced it before. She wanted to break the 5 fire formation but it was difficult for her as well. The only battle that had an extremely big disparity would be the battle between Abysmal Saint Master and Jian Wushuang. Die! Jian Wushuang was raging with anger. He appeared before Abysmal Saint Master and wielded a sword each with his 18 arms. Every stroke of sword light contained boundless power of reincarnation at a terrifyingly fast speed. Most importantly, it collaborated with his own divine power and the power of ancient tribe bloodline. Then it exploded with billowing power. However, Abysmal Saint Master didn't care about such an attack. Such a joke! Abysmal Saint Master sneered and casually pointed. Then, boundless darkness flowed out and instantly formed a black hand that grasped the void in front at lightning speed. Jian Wushuang slashed out with many sword lights but the dark hand broke them apart. Jian Wushuang, You are only a real god. No matter how powerful you are, you could only have the fighting power of a peak emperor god at most. How dare you fight against me? Who gave you such courage? Abysmal Saint Master looked at Jian Wushuang in disdain as he spat his scornful remark. Humph! Jian Wushuang humphed coldly as he retreated. Swoosh, 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 swoosh. There were 5 continuous resplendent golden lights which appeared next to Abysmal Saint Master. The 5 golden lights were extremely fast. Abysmal Saint Master raised his eyebrows and a dark protective barrier substantiated. The 5 golden lights hit the dark protective barrier and it shattered into pieces after 4 loud thuds. Then, the final golden light aimed at Abysmal Saint Master's head without hindrance. Abysmal Saint Master looked surprised, but his figure turned illusionary and he dodged the golden light easily. Abysmal Saint Master regained stability in the void and couldn't help but look at the 5 golden lights. Is this your infamous golden sword? You only had 4 previously, but now you have 5. Plus, they look like they have become much stronger. It seems that you have improved greatly, huh? Abysmal Saint Master looked at him with a cold gaze. It was true. It had been a total of 12,000 years since the war in Lineage of Star. To the ordinary almighties, the time span was naturally nothing. However, to Jian Wushuang, his power was of course different. During the 12,000 years, his comprehension towards doctrine had heightened massively. His comprehension of space-time doctrine and extermination doctrine had reached the extreme limit of the 8th level. He was only 1 step away from the 9th level and his soul power became much stronger too. As a result, his control of Hongjun Golden Sword had grown too. Not only could he drive the 5th Hongjun Golden Sword, but his Hongjun Golden Sword power increased tremendously. Previously, one of his Hongjun Golden Sword equaled the power of an attack of a peak emperor god. Now, the power of his Hongjun Golden Sword was equivalent to a peak emperor god's full hit with unique skill or secret skill. With the collaboration of 5 swords, they were of course fierce. I really belittled you. With 5 Hongjun Golden Swords, you should be able to be on par with an underworld god. However, you are still nothing in front of him. Abysmal Saint Master smiled coldly. Rumble. A huge dark whirlpool appeared behind Jian Wushuang. The dark whirlpool was unfathomable and contained boundless extermination power. At the very moment it appeared, Jian Wushuang's body was pulled and dragged greatly as though he was going to be swallowed by the dark whirlpool. In the middle of the dark whirlpool, Abysmal Saint Master stepped on a dark demon dragon as they plunged out. Roar! The demon dragon let out a roar and its roar shook the sky. Layers of dark ripples spread in the air as Abysmal Saint Master waved. Chapter 1970. Do you need help? Virm. He waved and a large dark cloud pressed at Jian Wushuang. The dark cloud covered the sky and the power that it contained was far stronger than an emperor god. Jian Wushuang's eyes were bloodshot while a terrifying sword intention swept out from his body. Among his 18 arms, there were 4 that were holding a sword at the same time. The swords were naturally Blood Mountain swords. Then, Blood Mountain Sword was roaring for blood in madness. It contained boundless unyieldingness. King's Sword Principle, first move. He was just like a monarch high and above as he raised the sword in his hand. When the sword slashed, there would be hundreds of millions of heads that would fall to the ground. Quang. A terrifying sword light was instantly magnified and engulfed tens of thousands of miles when it was slashed out. The sword light was shimmering in gold, looking rather eye-catching. It immediately hit the dark clouds above that were pressing down. The sword light pierced it. Then, the large dark cloud immediately dispersed. Abysmal Saint Master looked at Jian Wushuang in shock. He could tell that Jian Wushuang's power had reached the level of a great emperor. He had never used the secret skill of Star Palace, nor did he break any ancient star. But his sword principle itself had reached such level? Of course, the King's Sword Principle was originally fierce. As Jian Wushuang's comprehension of sword principle increased, the power of his sword principle naturally became even stronger. The stroke was Jian Wushuang's strongest stroke. After that stroke, although Abysmal Saint Master's attack was blocked, Jian Wushuang didn't let loose, but he flicked his wrist and a scroll painting appeared in his hand. Then, he threw the scroll painting in the air and the scroll painting blended into the void. Suddenly, the sky above immediately churned. A captivating world of mountain and river appeared in the sky. Mountain river as palm and 9 province as seal. The third move overwhelmed the rain. Rumble. A vast land descended mightily. With Jian Wushuang's power, he performed the seal of overwhelm the rain without holding back. The power of the descending land barely reached the threshold of a great emperor. Looking at the descending land, abysmal Saint Master's gaze was cold and a few dark lights suddenly burst out. Punk, 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 punk. A few dark lights piercing the land and the entire lofty land immediately shattered into a few pieces. Boy, your skills are not too shabby. However, too bad, it's useless. Abysmal Saint Master's voice was cold. Jian Wushuang's face grew dim. King's Sword Principle. 9 Province Seal, the third seal. They were both his strongest attack skills. However, even though he had performed with his all, he had barely reached the threshold of a great emperor. Compared to a true emperor, he was nowhere near one. Just then, Abysmal, what are you doing? Why don't you hurry up and suppress that boy? There was a low bellow from the surrounding battlefield. The one who had spoken was naturally Great Emperor Colored Glaze. Great Emperor Zisu and herself were held back by the 5 godly spirits and Jian. In a short time, it would be difficult to defeat their opponents. The only breaking point was with Abysmal Saint Master. Only if Abysmal Saint Master suppressed Jian Wushuang and then he had an extra hand to join forces with them, Jian Yi and the 5 godly spirits could be defeated in an instant. By then, the battle would end. However, Abysmal Saint Master had yet to take Jian Wushuang down since the beginning of the war. Hearing Great Emperor Colored Glaze's roar, Abysmal Saint Master's corner of his lips twitched. He couldn't help but resent it. However, he couldn't do anything to Jian Wushuang. He was a top Great Emperor on the top 3 on Heaven and Earth Supreme ranking list. Even though he had yet to recover fully from his injuries, he was still much stronger than many other Great Emperor. He was far beyond Jian Wushuang as well. Most importantly was that he held scruples when he fought with Jian Wushuang. He was afraid that he might kill Jian Wushuang by accident if the hit was too powerful. Hence, he held back when he attacked. But in the end, because he held back, he couldn't take down Jian Wushuang. Son, look at how I am going to trap you in. Abysmal Saint Master's voice was cold, but he had finally revealed his true power. There was boundless darkness that swept over and formed a huge black chain. The black chain was extremely sturdy, but they extended from all corners of the void without any symptoms, especially in the void around Jian Wushuang. There were dark whirlpools that appeared from nowhere. The black chains were moving to entangle Jian Wushuang simultaneously. Jian Wushuang's face changed and the sword lights continuously swept out from him. His fighting power exploded to its extreme limit. He wanted to break apart those chains that were flying towards him. However, the chains were too flexible, too fast and too plentiful. One slash after another extended over again and again. In a short while, the black chains formed a huge prison to seal off the spacetime that Jian Wushuang was in. It naturally trapped Jian Wushuang within as well. T. Jian Wushuang looked shocked and the sword intention swept out to slash the surrounding prison. However, no matter how he attacked, the black prison didn't move. When he performed King Emperor's skill again, it could only shake the dark cover, but it was not enough to break it. After Jian Wushuang was trapped in the darkness prison, Abysmal Saint Master had the free time to fight elsewhere. Swoosh. Abysmal Saint Master's body moved and he obviously moved to where the other 2 battles were. T. Jian Wushuang suddenly thought and the 7 ancient stars in between his eyebrows lit up. He knew that as soon as Abysmal Saint Master had the bandwidth to join other battles, he would be defeated. Hence, he had to perform his trump card to break the darkness prison and keep Abysmal Saint Master occupied again. He had 2 kinds of trump cards, the secret skill of Star Palace and the Star Destruction skill. The secret skill of Star Palace was extremely important, but it had yet to reach the time to really perform it. He naturally could only perform Star Destruction skill. Just as Jian Wushuang was preparing to break his ancient star to increase his power, hee, it's so noisy here. There was a burst of faint laughter from the nearby void. The voice contained a special power. When it spread over to the battlefield, everyone who was fighting ferociously stopped instantly. Abysmal Saint Master, who had been hurrying to the other two battlefields, also stopped his footsteps to look at the direction of the source of the voice. Jian Wushuang also looked in the direction of the source of the voice. In the void, there was an enchanting woman in a tight red robe leaping over. Her footsteps were very slow, but every step she took leaped over a very long distance. Merely after a few steps, she appeared on the battlefield. The moment she appeared, her beautiful eyes looked at Jian Wushuang directly. Jian Wushuang, long time no see. Do you need help? Chapter 1971 Powerful Assistant. Jian Wushuang, long time no see. Do you need help? The incomer's faint laughter reverberated in the universe. Everyone at the scene was astonished. Abysmal Saint Master, Great Emperor Zisu and Great Emperor Colored Glaze saw the incomer and their eyes dilated in shock. No doubt, they had never seen an enchanting woman in a red robe. However, the enchanting woman in the red robe gave out an aura that wasn't weaker than theirs. She was definitely at the level of a great emperor. The moment she appeared, she brought about great pressure to the other three great emperors. She was obviously not only a great emperor but an extremely strong great emperor. Previously, there was a mysterious Emperor 13. Then, Jian Wushuang's sword servant reached the level of a great emperor. Now, there's another great emperor? She obviously knew Jian Wushuang personally. Since when did great emperor experts become so invaluable? Great Emperor Colored Glaze muttered. However, they didn't know that Jian Wushuang was quite shocked then. He looked at the enchanting woman in the red robe and it stirred a great commotion in his heart. The enchanting woman in the red robe, he of course knew her. Lord Spirit Sound. Jian Wushuang couldn't help but clenched. It's her. King of Venomous Worms who was living on Jian Wushuang was shocked too. That was right. The enchanting woman in the red robe who had suddenly come was Lord Spirit Sound who had stayed in Star Foggy Sea back then. Back then, before Jian Wushuang had yet to leave Green Fire World, he had once received a great opportunity. It was in Star Foggy Sea. Through the test on Star Island, he became a disciple of Star Palace in Lineage of Star. Then, Star Foggy Sea was under Lord Spirit Sound's control. When Jian Wushuang first saw Lord Spirit Sound, he thought Lord Spirit Sound was from Lineage of Star and it was Master of Star Palace who had intentionally arranged to pick disciples for Lineage of Star. Even Lord Spirit Sound had said that herself. When Jian Wushuang passed the test and became a disciple of Star Palace in Lineage of Star, Star Foggy Sea had been within Jian Wushuang's control. Then, Lord Spirit Sound left and Jian Wushuang had no idea where she went. In the beginning, Jian Wushuang never minded much. But later on, when he really arrived in Lineage of Star then became the new Palace Master of Lineage of Star, and after he had found out more about the environment of Green Fire World, he noticed the unusual. Firstly, everyone from Lineage of Star, including Master of Star Palace, had no idea who Lord Spirit Sound was. Hence, it was even more impossible that it could have been Master of Star Palace who arranged it. Secondly, under normal circumstances, it would be impossible for Star Foggy Sea to appear in Green Fire World. After knowing this, Jian Wushuang started suspecting Lord Spirit Sound's true identity. He had even asked King of Venomous Worm about that before. After all, King of Venomous Worms had stayed in Star Foggy Sea for a very long time but he had said that he wasn't sure either. Just then, Lord Spirit Sound reappeared in front of him again. Jian Wushuang had finally determined that Lord Spirit Sound was from a great background. As for controlling Star Foggy Sea for Master of Star Palace, it was a plain joke. After all, the aura that Lord Spirit Sound had displayed was of great emperor level. During the Master of Star Palace's peak, he was only a peak emperor god. How could he command Lord Spirit Sound? Jian Wushuang took a deep breath. He didn't think further but answered, Lord Spirit Sound, lend me a hand. I, Jian Wushuang and Green Fire World will remember this. No problem, Lord Spirit Sound smiled faintly. After that, she suddenly pointed with her delicate finger. Rumble. The space-time shook. The dark void where Jian Wushuang was instantly dispersed and the vast darkness prison around him broke apart. There was boundless light that filled the universe. Jian Wushuang moved and he immediately shook off the darkness prison. The sight shocked Abysmal Saint Master. She broke my darkness prison so easily. This person's power is not any weaker than mine. Sush, sush. Great Emperor Zisu and Great Emperor Colored Glaze appeared next to Abysmal Saint Master. As for Jian Yi and the 5 godly spirits, they naturally came behind Jian Wushuang. Lord Spirit Sound, thank you, Jian Wushuang expressed his gratitude. Don't worry about it. I have stayed in Green Fire World for so many years and I do have feelings for the place. How could I just sit and watch outsiders trying to conquer Green Fire World? Lord Spirit Sound said with a smile. Jian Wushuang nodded and he looked at the 3 great emperors again. Lord Spirit Sound, could you please help me keep one of them busy next? Jian Wushuang asked. Sure. Lord Spirit Sound nodded and then she pointed at Great Emperor Zisu. Among the 3, this person in the purple robe is the strongest. I will keep him occupied so he doesn't have extra time to attack. As for the other 2, you can take care of them. No problem, Jian Wushuang nodded heavily. As long as Lord Spirit Sound could keep Great Emperor Zisu occupied, Jian Yi, the 5 gods and himself could deal with Abysmal Saint Master and Great Emperor Colored Glaze. Let's do it. Lord Spirit Sound didn't waste any more time but flew out. Hey, you in purple robe, your opponent is I. Lord Spirit Sound flashed a malicious smile at Great Emperor Zisu. There was a strange light in her eyes. Great Emperor Zizu's heart skipped a beat. His face instantly grew solemn and he lost the relaxed look earlier. Oh, you could resist my magic. Not too shabby, Lord Spirit Sound commented. Then, there was an evil-looking crimson sickle in her hand. From a very far distance, the crimson sickle in Lord Spirit Sound's hand was swung out. Just like Death's sickle. The 3 sickle lights swept out simultaneously and instantly formed 3 brilliant sickle rivers in the void. The 3 sickle rivers were beautifully magnificent. They were captivating. The sickle river flowed over and Great Emperor Zisu instantly felt that he was in a billowing sickle ocean that he couldn't shake off. He instantly counterattacked. Every time he broke a sickle light, there was another brilliant sickle light that flew at him again. In an instant, Great Emperor Shisu of the 5th place on Heaven and Earth's Supreme Ranking list was suppressed by Lord Spirit Sound. So strong. Abysmal Saint Master and Great Emperor Colored Glaze's faces changed at the sight. They could tell that although Lord Spirit Sound was far below the mysterious Expert Emperor 13, she was much stronger than all the ordinary Great Emperors in Eternal Chaotic World. If they have to list her in terms of ranking in power, she absolutely could fight with Red Dragon King in the 2nd place. Even if I were to be at my peak status, I reckon I would still have the lower hand when I fought with this person, Abysmal Saint Master said. Then, Jian Wushuang, Jian Yi and the 5 godly spirits moved at the same time. Chapter 1972 Hometown. Both parties continued to fight again. However, it was different then. Great Emperor Zisu were suppressed by Lord Spirit Sound. There was only Abysmal Saint Master and Great Emperor Colored Glaze left. Jian Wushuang sent Jian Yi to keep Great Emperor Colored Glaze occupied. As for Abysmal Saint Master, Jian Wushuang had dealt with him with the assistance of the 5 godly spirits. Previously, it was only myself and I was not your match. But now, Jian Wushuang's eyes were cold. At the same time, the first ancient star in between his eyebrows immediately broke. Among the 7 ancient stars, he had only broken one. It was nothing as it was quite easy to recover it. With the breaking of the ancient star, Jian Wushuang's overall power instantly increased tremendously. In addition to that, he had the 5 godly spirits with him. Besides, Lord Spirit Sound, who already suppressed Great Emperor Zisu, as she suppressed Great Emperor Zisu, she could perform some sickle light occasionally to the surrounding battlefield. That gave some Jian Wushuang some assistance. Fight. Jian Wushuang was billowing with murderous intention and they fought with Abysmal Saint Master directly. Then, Abysmal Saint Master wasn't as relaxed as before. It would be impossible if he wanted to trap Jian Wushuang as easily. D****. My power had yet to reach my peak status. Alone, it would be impossible for me to take Jian Wushuang down. Abysmal Saint Master's face grew grave and he couldn't help but steal a glance at the battlefield by the side. He realized that Great Emperor Colored Glaze's situation was quite similar to his. As for Great Emperor Zisu, it was one-sided. Where did Jian Wushuang find such powerful assistance? Abysmal Saint Master was roaring in his head. Previously, he had had the terrifying Emperor 13 to help him. Now Jian Wushuang had another Great Emperor expert who was only stronger, not weaker, than when he was at his peak. How long had Jian Wushuang lived for? How could he be that capable? We're in big trouble. Great Emperor Colored Glaze looked cold as he looked around. With the assistance of that person, the three of us couldn't even lay a foot in Green Fire World, let alone conquering Green Fire World. That was true. The three of them were held back entirely. It was impossible to barge into Green Fire World. On top of that, one should know that the news about Green Fire World had spread all over. Although the three of them had rushed there, the speed of other experts from various forces absolutely wouldn't be any slower. As long as they couldn't conquer Green Fire World at the first instant, it would be difficult for them to achieve the greatest advantage. As expected, the experts from Eternal Chaotic World arrived in a short while. Those who rushed over were merely 3 ordinary Sir Gods. They were closer to Green Fire World and they rushed over when they had found out about the existence of Green Fire World. When they arrived, they saw Green Fire World and they also saw a shocking battle. My goodness, this is... Great Emperors, there are so many Great Emperors. Abysmal Saint Master, Great Emperor Zisu and Great Emperor Colored Glaze. Also the infamous Sword Emperor, his sword servant became a Great Emperor as well. As for the enchanting woman in the red robe, I don't know her but she is powerful. She could even suppress Great Emperor Zisu directly? What are they doing? Why are they fighting? The few Sir Gods were astonished but mostly confused. Very soon they spread the news about the war. Most of the experts from various forces that were rushing over to Green Fire World were shocked at the news and they traveled at an even faster speed. On the battlefield, regardless of if it was the 3 Great Emperors or those from Jian Wushuang's side, they noticed the surrounding experts. Jian Wushuang didn't care much. However, Abysmal Saint Master and Great Emperor Colored Glaze's faces grew grave. They knew that it might be only a few Sir Gods who had arrived but in no time, there would be more experts. Even in the end, the entire Sanctuary Alliance or the entire Eternal Chaotic World would be there. That was fact. There were more and more experts gathering around Green Fire World. Most of them were Sir Gods and Emperor Gods. In no time, rumble. A vast figure descended from the sky and there was an aura of Great Emperor level that spread. Purple Moon. It's Great Emperor Purple Moon. Every expert was impressed. Experts from both parties were fighting a battle and they noticed the arrival of Great Emperor Purple Moon. Abysmal Saint Master, Great Emperor Zisu and Great Emperor Colored Glaze were unhappy. But as Great Emperor Purple Moon had already arrived, it would be impossible if the 3 of them wanted to conquer Green Fire World first. The 3 of them immediately stopped. But don't you want to continue the fight? Jian Wushuang's face was cold as he glared at the 3 Great Emperors. Jian Wushuang, you're just lucky. You got help from all the experts all the time, Abysmal Saint Master said coldly and he couldn't help but look at Lord Spirit Sound. Until then, Lord Spirit Sound had seemed to be extremely at ease all this while. He wondered if she had really revealed all her power. Regardless, whatever power she displayed would be enough to gain Abysmal Saint Master's attention. Humph. Being able to get help from experts is my skill as well, Jian Wushuang replied coldly. Even though they had stopped fighting, both parties were still oppositional. Everyone, please calm down. Great Emperor Purple Moon walked over and said with a curious look as he watched both parties, "What's going on?" "What's going on?" asked Jian Wushuang. Abysmal Saint Master said coldly, "He carries a big secret with him." big secret? Great Emperor Purple Moon was confused. It seems that Purple Moon has yet to know. Let me tell you, Green Fire World is Jian Wushuang's hometown. When I found out Green Fire World's unique point, I wanted to check it out at Green Fire World at the first instant. But in the end he chased me out. I had no choice and asked Abysmal and Zisu to come along with me. But in the end... You saw that yourself, Great Emperor Colored Glaze smiled coldly. The moment Great Emperor Colored Glaze said that, everyone at the scene was stunned. There were gazes that were redirected to Jian Wushuang in shock. Green Fire World was Jian Wushuang's hometown? Was it a joke? Looking at the gazes that flew to him, Jian Wushuang had no intention of hiding. He replied, "Yes, Green Fire World is really my hometown. As such, without my permission, don't even think about entering Green Fire World." All experts at the scene went quiet when they heard that. Even Great Emperor Purple Moon's face changed. If Green Fire World was really as magical as the rumor said and had limitless possibilities, Sanctuary Alliance definitely would try to figure a way to conquer it. Then, make some changes to make Green Fire World a brand new sanctuary. In other words, Sanctuary Alliance would take control of everything there. However, Green Fire World was Jian Wushuang's hometown. Chapter 1973. All parties arrived. After a while, Great Emperor Purple Moon finally spoke again. "Everyone, this is very serious. From my point of view, let's wait until the others arrive before we discuss this." Then, Great Emperor Purple Moon stole a glance at Jian Wushuang. From the bottom of his heart, Great Emperor Purple Moon would be on Jian Wushuang's side. However, Green Fire World was associated with many parties. He, who was an ordinary Great Emperor, couldn't do much. Hearing what Great Emperor Purple Moon had said, the three of them nodded simultaneously. "All right then. Let's wait until the others arrive." Abysmal Saint Master looked cold. Their initial plan had failed anyway. It would be impossible if they wanted to conquer Green Fire World and get the biggest advantage. However, even if they couldn't get the biggest advantage, they absolutely wouldn't want to see Jian Wushuang continue to conquer such a great treasure. As for Jian Wushuang, he stood there without saying a word. He knew that it was a matter of time until he would have to deal with experts from various forces in eternal chaotic world. Hence, he had been well prepared since long ago. As time flew past, there were more and more experts that came to the void around Green Fire World. The experts who came saw Green Fire World and they found out about the relationship between Jian Wushuang and Green Fire World. Suddenly, there was shock and astonishment. No wonder Sword Emperor was so talented. It turns out that his hometown is Green Fire World. It is only a unique place like Green Fire World that could nurture a genius like him. Plus, before the news of the ancient battlefield spread, Green Fire World possessed it. Sword Emperor definitely received great advantage from the ancient battlefield. That's a definite. I have heard of Sword Emperor's billowing skills long ago. I think all his skills are from this ancient battlefield. Previously, during the war in Lineage of Star, they brought out so many Dao soldiers, and where were they from? There's no doubt they were definitely obtained from this ancient battlefield. Countless experts were talking about it. Then, most of the experts who were wandering in the ancient battlefield had already arrived outside Green Fire World. Even great emperors besides Great Emperor Purple Moon, there were another 3. Including Abysmal Saint Master, Great Emperor Zisu and Great Emperor Colored Glaze, the 15 Great Emperors on Heaven and Earth Supreme ranking list, there were 7 of them there. As for the remaining Great Emperors, either they cultivated in seclusion all year round or they were staying back to guard eternal chaotic world. Plus, these were merely human cultivators' camp. Those special tribes also had a large number of experts rushing over. Especially the top 4 peak tribes that had great emperors standing guard. The 4 peak tribes conquered a piece of sanctuary each among the special tribes. Their positions and foundations were extraordinary. The 4 peak tribes were Ancient Gods, Sky-Devouring Clan, God-Eater and Blackwater Dragon. Among the 4, Ancient Gods were widely acknowledged as the best at close body combat. On top of that, they were also recognized as the most prosperous tribe. Their ancient god emperor was once known to be the top overlord in the First Era as well. Sky Devouring clan was known to be the most barbaric tribe. They grew through consumption of various bloodline powers. They had the smallest population, but their overall power were second to ancient gods. The remaining God Eater and Black Water Dragon tribes were ancient, and they were extremely powerful as well. Then, the Four Peak tribes had great emperors attending the scene personally. The great emperor from ancient god tribe who came had a total of 9 stars in between his eyebrows. Behind the 9-star ancient god, Jian Wushuang saw 2 familiar faces. They were King Gutong and King Guyu. King Gutong were friends with Jian Wushuang. It could be said that besides Holocaust Sect and Acheron Palace, who were always in the dark, all experts from various forces in Eternal Chaotic World were there. And they only had one target, which was Green Fire World. However, if they wanted to step foot in Green Fire World, they had to first wipe out the only hindrance, which was Jian Wushuang, who blocked the Green Fire World. Jian Wushuang, Lord Spirit Sound, and Jian Yi stood side by side. His gaze was cold as he glared at the thickly dotted experts in front of him. He felt an unprecedented pressure. I'm impressed. So many chaotic realms. I think more than half of the cultivators of the chaotic realm from this era gathered here. Lord Spirit Sound was astonished. She looked at Jian Wushuang and asked, Jian Wushuang, there are so many people who are eyeing Green Fire World. Are you confident you can protect it? I don't know. Jian Wushuang shook his head. You don't know? Lord Spirit Sound creased his eyebrows. I really don't know, but I can play a bet. Jian Wushuang squinted his eyes, and there was determination in his eyes. Jian Wushuang's body immediately moved, and he flew to the experts in front. When he arrived before the experts, Jian Wushuang stopped and took a deep breath. He bowed to the experts and spoke, I greet you all. Everyone should be here for my Green Fire World. However, it's a pity that Green Fire World is only a small temple. It can't contain so many experts. Hence, I apologize for the shortcomings in our hospitality. Sword Emperor. There was a cold voice. A tall man who was red-skinned as though he was covered in flames stood out. The tall man was called Yen Zun, one of the great emperor from Sanctuary Alliance. However, there were 15 great emperors on Heaven and Earth's supreme ranking list, and Yen Zun happened to be in the 15th place. Then, Yen Zun said with a loud and clear voice, Green Fire World is the core of the battlefield. It contains boundless potential and magic. Such an important place shouldn't be conquered by you alone. Please hand over Green Fire World. You are also a member of Sanctuary Alliance. As long as you hand over Green Fire World, Sanctuary Alliance won't mistreat you too. We can discuss to let you keep territory in Green Fire World. What do you think? Keep territory? I wonder, Mr. Yen Zun, how about the cultivators in Green Fire World? Jian Wushuang asked. Yen Zun thought for a while and answered, if Green Fire World were to be that magical, Sanctuary Alliance would definitely remake a brand new sanctuary that is far better than any one of the 10 cultivation sanctuaries. It might even surpass Thunderbolt Island. However, such an important place isn't suitable for any ordinary cultivators there. However, don't worry. We will find a way to relocate all your cultivators in Green Fire World. I assure you that they will continue to cultivate and grow. Although it was Yen Zun's speech, he had been in Sanctuary Alliance long enough that he was certain that the result would be as such after the discussion among the higher-ups from Sanctuary Alliance. However, the result was definitely not something Jian Wushuang wished for. As expected, Jian Wushuang's face grew cold. Chapter 1974 Bloodline is of paramount. To make Green Fire World into another cultivation sanctuary far beyond Thunderbolt Island? Jian Wushuang believed that Green Fire World absolutely had the potential. It might be even better. However, to create cultivation sanctuary, it would require all cultivators in Green Fire World to relocate. Firstly, these cultivators were nurtured in Green Fire World to begin with, and it was their hometown. Why would they need to be relocated? Who would be willing to leave their home? Besides, Green Fire World was a big world. It contained many ancient worlds in different sizes. In accumulation, how many cultivators would there be? With so many cultivators, even if they really relocated, just how difficult would it be? During the process of relocation, it was inevitable that a large number of cultivators or innocent people would die. The people had been plunged into an abyss of misery anyway. The condition that Yan Zun proposed was considered generous in Sanctuary Alliance. If it wasn't for Jian Wushuang, they would have conquered Green Fire World by force with thunderous measures. As for cultivators in Green Fire World, Sanctuary Alliance would at most leave those who were stronger and more talented. The remaining, including countless living spirits in ancient worlds, would be wiped out straight away. That was Sanctuary Alliance's cruelty. To Sanctuary Alliance, they only cared about the safety of the entire eternal chaotic world. As for cultivators in the big world, they wouldn't care. Sanctuary Alliance didn't care, but Jian Wushuang could not care, because Green Fire World was his hometown. How about the special tribes? Jian Wushuang looked at the experts who were from special tribes. Sanctuary Alliance want to make Green Fire World into a brand new sanctuary, we naturally won't stop them. However, if Green Fire World were to be that magical, the few of our special tribes would only need Sanctuary Alliance to agree to segregate a territory for us to cultivate, the great emperor from Sky Devouring Clan spoke. Sanctuary Alliance and the special tribe had always been keeping a mutual position. Plus, there were times where if it concerned the safety of eternal chaotic world, both parties would work together. Hence, there wasn't any hatred nor resentment. Just like Green Fire World, a special place, as the special tribes listed their conditions, Sanctuary Alliance would mostly agree. It seemed that the cultivators in Green Fire World are destined to be relocated? Jian Wushuang's voice was cold. Jian Wushuang, don't be stubborn. With you alone, you won't be able to keep Green Fire World, Yensun advised. Jian Wushuang, do you still want to be stubborn about this? Abysmal Saint Master smiled coldly. He was dying for Jian Wushuang to persist. Then, all experts from various forces would be raging with anger, especially the special tribe that was hot-tempered. It'd be best if they were to kill Jian Wushuang straight away. Sword Emperor, hand over Green Fire World. Considering the fact that you carry the bloodline of Ancient God, I guarantee that if you were to be willing to hand out Green Fire World, they absolutely won't have the guts to do anything to the cultivators in Green Fire World. The 9-star Ancient God who lead the Ancient Gods spoke loud and clear. Jian Wushuang couldn't help but look at the 9-star Ancient God. He had heard long ago that there was a 9-star Ancient God in Ancient God tribe, but it was his first time seeing one. I wonder how I should address you? Jian Wushuang asked. I am King Luoyu. The 9-star Ancient God replied. King Luoyu? The Luo family? Jian Wushuang was surprised. I once received the blood essence inheritance of an 8-star Ancient God, King Luozhen. He should be related to you, right? King Luozhen? Your Ancient God bloodline is from King Luozhen? King Luo Yes face changed. King Luoyu, I once visited Ancient God Sanctuary and I know of an Ancient God too. From what I know, Ancient God tribe has an iron discipline whereby bloodline is of paramount importance. Regardless of their strength, as long as their bloodline is stronger than yours, you have to be respectful and you even have to listen to their command. I wonder if that's true, Jian Wushuang said. It is, King Luoyu nodded. Ancient God tribe is a tribe that honors the bloodline. We believed in Ancient God Emperor from the first era. Over the years, this has never changed. If so, there was a strange light in Jian Wushuang's eyes. Then vroom. There was a boundless bloodline power that exploded from Jian Wushuang's body. The bloodline power was extremely intense and vast. It was also very powerful. Jian Wushuang naturally let his ancient tribe bloodline power to flow out then. Ancient tribe was one of the 4 god tribes back in ancient times. It was a complete version of Ancient God. Ancient God was merely a faint bloodline that was segregated from Ancient tribe. In terms of purity of the bloodline, Ancient tribe bloodline was naturally above Ancient God. Then, as Jian Wushuang displayed his bloodline power, the experts from various forces didn't care but only thought that Jian Wushuang's bloodline power was ferocious. However, the ancient gods at the scene, for instance, King Gu Tong and King Gu Yu, and even 9-star ancient god King Luoyu, were instantly dumbfounded. This bloodline, royal bloodline. It wouldn't be mistaken. A bloodline aura that was sufficient for me to yield to. It is absolutely royal bloodline. It might even be purer than royal bloodline. How is this possible? The experts from ancient god tribe looked at Jian Wushuang in astonishment. They had known long ago that Jian Wushuang carried ancient god bloodline and it was royal ancient god. However, they had never expected that Jian Wushuang's bloodline would have heightened again and reached a brand new level. King Luoyu, do you remember what you said earlier? Jian Wushuang looked at King Luoyu coldly. The expression on King Luoyu's face was complicated. After he struggled for a bit emotionally, he let out a long sigh. King Luoyu lifted his head again, and the look he gave to Jian Wushuang had a tinge of reverence. Sword Emperor, although I have no idea how you obtained the bloodline, no doubt, the purity of your bloodline is above mine. There is no one in ancient god tribe that could compare to it favorably. In history, ancient god tribe has always honored bloodline above all. If you are willing to, you can head back to ancient god sanctuary with me and I will gather all masters of 9 cities to discuss taking you as our new ancient god emperor. I believe no one would dare to suspect. Jian Wushuang was surprised by his reply. The surrounding experts from various forces burst into an uproar. Although they had known since long ago that ancient god honored bloodline the most, King Luoyu was a great emperor. His power was far stronger than Jian Wushuang's and he should be on the top among ancient god tribe. At such a crucial moment, he could totally ignore it if he were to meet anyone who had a higher bloodline than him. However, they never expected that King Luoyu would immediately show his willingness to take Jian Wushuang as the new ancient god emperor. Chapter 1975. Astonished. This King Luoyu is so stupid. Many of them thought to themselves. They thought King Luoyu was stupid. However, they weren't people of ancient god tribe. They naturally wouldn't understand how much ancient god tribe values bloodline. Actually, not only ancient god tribe but also the other 3 peak tribes, they valued bloodline as important too. But just not as ridiculous as ancient god tribe. As for Jian Wushuang, he was shocked as well. He never thought that King Luoyu would recognize his bloodline and immediately take him on as the new ancient god emperor. King Luoyu, as you recognize my bloodline, who would you stand by if I wanted to protect Green Fire World? Jian Wushuang asked. Of course, by your side, King Luoyu said without hesitation. At the same time, his eyes glowed with golden luster as he looked at everyone around. Listen up, although Sword Emperor has yet to become ancient god emperor, his bloodline is right there. We ancient god tribe has to follow his lead from today onwards. Whoever goes against Sword Emperor will be our enemy too. King Luoyu was determined and firm with his decision. He didn't leave any space for negotiation. There were many people who creased their eyebrows at the sight. Ancient god tribe was one of the strongest tribes among the unique tribes. It was said that there was not only a 9-star ancient god, there were also 8-star ancient gods and 7-star ancient gods. With such powerful force, there was no one who dared to ignore them. Humph, so what if the ancient god tribe is supporting you? Today, Sanctuary Alliance and many other unique tribes are here to conquer Green Fire World. With ancient god tribe alone, you can't stop us. Colored Glaze Great Emperor's cold voice reverberated in the air. The surrounding people looked rather enthusiastic. It was true. Almost all top forces in Eternal Chaotic World gathered there, including Sanctuary Alliance. With ancient god tribe alone, he didn't stand a chance for all forces and experts to give way. Jian Wushuang, I'll ask you for the last time. Are you moving away? Colored Glaze Great Emperor stared at Jian Wushuang with a cold look. All forces and experts at the scene were staring at Jian Wushuang. There were chilly gleams in their eyes. Just then, Jian Wushuang, who had everyone's attention, lifted his head again. On his cold face, there was a tinge of madness. He didn't speak and only beckoned to Green Fire World nearby. Jian Nantian in Green Fire World's formation saw Jian Wushuang's signal and he immediately plunged to Jian Wushuang. When he appeared next to Jian Wushuang, he waved and took out a pearl. The pearl looked murky as it contained a unique aura. Looking at the pearl, the madness in Jian Wushuang's eyes flowed out. He glared at the countless experts before him. These experts could almost represent the entire eternal chaotic world. Then he was fighting against the entire eternal chaotic world alone. Even so, he wasn't nervous or afraid. There was only determination and madness. Everyone, let me show you something. You'll definitely be very emotional after you see it. Jian Wushuang smiled maliciously and handed the blurry pearl over. All the experts at the scene couldn't help but look at the pearl. Everyone started to feel it using their soul power. Through the pearl, they could instantly sense the existence of the surrounding ancient battlefield. Not only could they sense it, but they could also recognize it clearly. The boundless ancient battlefield was before all experts' eyes then. So huge. This ancient battlefield is so vast. It's too vast. The area that we searched is only a drop in a bucket compared to the entire ancient battlefield. With such a vast ancient battlefield, it is at least 10 times bigger than the one in ancient Mystery Land. All experts at the scene were astonished. After a short while, they noticed a huge object on the ancient battlefield. Skull. An extremely huge skull. A skull that was countless times bigger than any other worlds. Just like Green Fire World, it was a world that considered quite large in size. However, Green Fire World looked only like a small spot in between the eyebrows of the skull. How is this possible? Unbelievable. This is simply unbelievable. Who is this? Whose head is this? Whose head could be that huge? Could it be a head of an expert from ancient times? Impossible. Even though there were countless experts during ancient times, there shouldn't be any expert's body that could be that huge in size. Dumbfounded, everyone was dumbfounded. They were shocked by the huge skull. Actually, they couldn't be blamed. When Jian Wushuang first saw the skull, he was shocked too. He found it unbelievable too. The skull was too shocking. Compared to the boundless ancient battlefield, the skull was even more astonishing. The few great emperors at the scene, such as Abysmal Saint Master, Great Emperor Zisu, Colored Glaze Great Emperor, Yenzun, King Luo Yu and other great emperors from the other 3 special tribes, were all gawking at the sight. As great emperors, they were extremely experienced. However, it was their first time coming across such an unbelievable sight. However, after a short while of astonishment, all experts at the scene burst with excitement. Excitement? Yeah, excitement. They had previously only known that the ancient battlefield contained boundless opportunities, but they couldn't determine just how impressive the place was. However, as they saw the entire ancient battlefield through the pearl then, they had a better understanding of the ancient battlefield. Merely the boundless territory size was enough to make them go crazy. The unbelievable skill shocked them even further. One should know that the more astonishing it was, the more unusual the skull was. There was no doubt that the territory where the skull was located absolutely contained unbelievable opportunities. At the same time, they saw that the location of Green Fire World was right in between the eyebrows of the skull, while the skull was located in the core of the ancient battlefield. Even a silly man could see the value of Green Fire World. It was absolutely much greater than what they had guessed earlier. It was truly a huge treasure that could drive the entire Sanctuary Alliance crazy. The experts' gazes were burning with enthusiasm. It was unprecedented enthusiasm. Even the great emperors were burning enthusiastically. Jian Wushuang smirked coldly at the sight. Hee, all of you are enjoying the view of this ancient battlefield, enjoying the discovery of the huge skull? Didn't you notice anything different in the surrounding void on the ancient battlefield? Everyone was caught off guard. Then, they looked into the surrounding void on the ancient battlefield. Chapter 1976 Grand Formation, Space-Time Storm. The experts fixed their gazes upon the ancient battlefield, but they had never bothered with the surrounding void on the ancient battlefield. When they heard Jian Wushuang's comment, they looked at the surrounding void on the ancient battlefield through the light. Then they noticed the difference in the void. Space-time storm? Such a huge space-time storm, and this space-time storm covered the entire battlefield? My goodness, such a huge space-time storm. I have lived for over 1 million of years, but it is my first time seeing this. Many experts at the scene exclaimed in surprise. The ancient battlefield was huge, but the space-time storm could engulf the entire battlefield. Its size could be well imagined. Of course, with such a huge space-time storm, the energy contained was definitely shocking too. Just a space-time storm? Jian Wushuang scoffed. Among the experts, there were people who immediately found the unique point of the space-time storm. Not just a space-time storm, there is also a grand formation. In the surrounding void on the ancient battlefield, there is a grand formation. The formation merged into one with the surrounding space-time storm, that's why it is hardly noticeable, an Emperor God explained. The Emperor God was an accomplished one in formations. He said, and the other experts had found the trace of the grand formation. There is really a formation, and the formation is profound. A huge formation merged flawlessly with the space-time storm? Who set up this grand formation? Unbelievable! The grand formation is simply unbelievable. There were experts exclaiming in surprise again. The exclamations were mostly from those who were accomplished in formations. Because they had a better understanding of formations, they knew how difficult it was to set up such a huge formation. To be able to merge the formation with the surrounding boundless space-time storm flawlessly, it was shocking. Impossible. This is impossible. How could such a terrifying space-time storm merge with the formation flawlessly? Forget about us from the second era. Even in the first era, there was absolutely no one who could set up such great formation. Even in the ancient era, he would definitely be a top almighty in formations to be able to set up such a great formation. Everyone was astonished. All their gazes were surprised. Regardless of if they understood formation or not, as long as one was experienced, they should be able to tell how unbelievable the grand formation was. At least to all experts in eternal chaotic world, it was simply a dream to merge a grand formation to space-time storm. But then, someone had done it. Jian Wushuang looked at the expert's response in front of him with a faint smile. His voice slowly reverberated in the universe. Can you all see clearly? Are you astonished? Are you excited? Do you find it unbelievable? His voice had a tinge of disdain. All experts became quiet. All the gazes were fixed upon Jian Wushuang again. They didn't know what Jian Wushuang's purpose was when he took out the pearl and showed them the true appearance of the ancient battlefield, the surrounding space-time storm, and the grand formation. At that very moment, Jian Wushuang waved and his willpower moved. Rumble. Heaven and earth quivered. There was a life-destroying aura that suddenly spread from the void above. The experts at the scene were stunned and looked towards the light. In the end, they saw a scene that they would never forget for the rest of their lives. They saw in the surrounding void on the ancient battlefield the huge space-time storm that was originally stable, all this while suddenly became extremely violent. Walala. Boundless space-time storms started churning in madness to destroy the Earth. The extermination aura that filled the universe and the entire ancient battlefield was from the space-time storm. At that very moment, everyone could feel the aura that the space-time storm gave out, an aura that could destroy heaven and earth. At the same time, they could faintly feel the power contained in space-time storm. Plus, the power had already started brewing and becoming very aggressive, and it continued to accumulate. It was as though the entire space-time storm would rain down on the ancient battlefield the very next moment. The scene shocked everyone. What is going on? Such terrifying power. If it were to rain down at the ancient battlefield, I wonder if the ancient battlefield could still survive. Gone. It'd be gone. If the power were to explode, the ancient battlefield would absolutely turn into a flatland. There wouldn't be anything left. Many experts answered. Then, all the gazes turned to look at one person. Jian Wushuang. Jian Wushuang. It was him who made the space-time storm violent. What is he trying to do? The experts at the scene were staring with anger as they questioned him. Then, there was unprecedented madness in Jian Wushuang's eyes. His face grew red and his burst of malicious laughter suddenly filled the air. You finally knew to be anxious? New to be worried? All of you seem pretty aggressive earlier. Jian Wushuang, what did you do? Colored Glaze Great Emperor roared. What did I do? Colored Glaze Great Emperor still can't tell? Actually, it's nothing. It's very simple. I merely manipulated the formation around the ancient battlefield so that the formation could shake off the space-time storm. But the space-time storm is so powerful that it is inevitable that there is going to be power that overspills. Jian Wushuang chuckled and spoke casually as though it was just a petty matter. However, many experts who studied formation at the scene stared as they heard Jian Wushuang's reply. No, no! The Emperor God who noticed the formation roared. This formation was merged with the space-time storm using an immeasurable method. The grand formation has become one with the space-time storm. How could they be separated? Once they are separated, the grand formation will collapse instantly, then the space-time storm will lose its balance and stir up a great commotion that will destroy the universe, destroying everything within the space-time storm. The ancient battlefield has no space to struggle but will instantly be squashed into dust by the space-time storm. All opportunities and treasures on this ancient battlefield, even all of us, will vanish in an instant. Stop it, Sword Emperor. Hurry up and stop it. Chapter 1977 Fight to Death but not give in. Stop it. The Emperor God started shouting at him. The others quickly responded as well. Jian Wushuang, stop it. Sword Emperor, don't act on impulse. We can discuss this. Jian Wushuang, what are you trying to do? Don't forget that Green Fire World is on this ancient battlefield too. Many started bellowing in anger while there were angry gazes on Jian Wushuang as well. In their anger, there was a faint tinge of fear. The power of the space-time storm was too terrifying. But do you know how to be afraid now? Jian Wushuang sneered, but the space-time storm didn't stop and became even more violent. The extermination aura from the void above and the surrounding became more intense. There were many experts at the scene who were shivering with fear because of the extermination aura. Jian Wushuang's malicious laughter continued to reverberate. Actually, I didn't want to use this trump card. But it's a pity that you all are such bullies. You really think I am just a softie from Green Fire World? That everyone could pressure me as they wish? So what if you are Sanctuary Alliance? So what if there are unique tribes? Even if the entire eternal chaotic world's forces and great emperors gather here, so what? Green Fire World is my hometown. Whoever dares to lay a finger on it, I will kill him. You want the countless cultivators in Green Fire World to relocate and leave Green Fire World. I, Jian Wushuang, am the first to disagree. The billions of cultivators in Green Fire World absolutely wouldn't agree as well. The ancestral experts from Green Fire World that died would be even more against that idea. We of Green Fire World would rather become ashes with the ancient battlefield. We strive to fight a life and death battle. Until the very last person dies, until the very last drop of blood is shed, we will never give in. Come on. If you have guts, come on in. His voice was like thunder, reverberated in the universe. Behind Jian Wushuang, in Green Fire World, large number of cultivators stood together as Jian Wushuang's hysterical laughter resounded in their ears. At that very moment, they clenched their hands together as hopelessness filled their eyes. They were roaring from the bottom of their hearts. They were born in Green Fire World. It was where their roots were. Countless ancestral experts saved Green Fire World for them. Forget about the further history. Merely tens of thousands years ago, when the troops of Jin Kingdom came, Green Fire World relied on themselves. Countless cultivators had advanced wave by wave and sacrificed countless experts. In the end, under Jian Wushuang's lead, they had won and survived. Then, Green Fire World's potential was gradually unearthed and growing to prosperity. There were experts in Green Fire World who had put in painstaking effort, especially their leader, Jian Wushuang. Then, the so-called experts from Eternal Chaotic World wanted to take away their hometown and chase them to other territories? To make them leave their homes? They swore to not yield. Fight, fight, fight. All of us are willing to following Wushuang City Master to fight a life and death battle. Until the very last person, until the very last drop of blood. We will never give in. At worst, we will all meet death together. There were angry roars with unprecedented determination and will that resounded across the sky. Although the countless cultivators in Green Fire World were nothing before the experts from Eternal Chaotic World, they were willing to fight to the death. There was soaring war intention that shook heaven and earth. At the far front of Green Fire World, countless experts from Eternal Chaotic World gathered there. That very moment, the experts exchanged a look and became quiet. They could feel Green Fire World's war intention and their determination. Most importantly, it was their determination. Their determination to live or die alongside Green Fire World. It was obvious that Green Fire World wanted to fight till the end of the world with them. The crucial thing was that they had the capital to meet death together. Once the space-time storm power exploded, everything would vanish into thin air. Maybe the few great emperors who were powerful could survive in the space-time storm with their fierce power, but no doubt, the others would all die. The ancient battlefield would vanish into thin air too. What should we do? Abysmal Saint Master, Colored Glaze Great Emperor Zisu, Yenzun and the other great emperors from the other three-peak unique tribe gathered. Although the great emperors were powerful, they felt helpless then. They were helpless towards the space-time storm. D***Gemenet. I wonder who was the one who set up such a terrifying grand formation in the void surrounding this ancient battlefield. Most importantly, the grand formation is in the hands of Green Fire World, Abysmal Saint Master said in a low voice. Then, space-time storm had yet to stop and it grew stronger. There was no one who didn't feel fearful of the space-time storm. With the threat of space-time storm and Green Fire World, who viewed death as an option, many of them were thinking of retreating. However, they were unwilling to just leave like that. Just as the experts were caught in a fix, in the nearby void, a figure in gray robe walked over slowly. With white hair and white eyes, his skin was as terrifyingly fair. He was a man, but he had a beautiful appearance that put all ladies in Eternal Chaotic World to shame. Once he had appeared, everyone at the scene quietened down. Countless gazes turned to him. Emperor Bai. That's great. Mr. Emperor Bai came personally. The strongest one, Emperor Bai? Countless experts at the scene were surprised. Jian Wushuang looked at the incomer too. He's finally here? Jian Wushuang muttered. He sent a message to Emperor Bai long ago, but Emperor Bai didn't reply. Just then, when both parties were in a stalemate, Mr. Emperor Bai finally appeared. Jian Wushuang had a good opinion of him. However, his good opinion aside, Green Fire World had such great potential and Emperor Bai was widely acknowledged as the leader, the strongest one. Jian Wushuang couldn't be certain on which side Emperor Bai would take. Emperor Bai appeared and first looked the pearl in Jian Wushuang's hand. Through the pearl, he saw the changes in the surrounding ancient battlefield and his face grew solemn. Jian Wushuang, slow down the formation first, Emperor Bai said. Then, everyone looked at Jian Wushuang. The great formation was still spinning and the extermination aura grew stronger over time. It was just like a knife above everyone's head. Jian Wushuang squinted his eyes and looked at Emperor Bai solemnly. He moved his willpower and the grand formation stopped. The void surrounding the ancient battlefield, including the space-time storm, gradually slowed down. Chapter 1978 Sit down and discuss. As the extermination aura from the surrounding void slowly dispersed, the experts at the scene gradually let out a breath of relief. Emperor Bai looked around and said in a great voice, I already know what happened. If both parties continued to fight, it is definitely a fight with a risk of mutual destruction. I believe that there shouldn't be anyone who wished to see such a situation. So, why don't we both sit down and discuss this? Then, Emperor Bai glanced at Sanctuary Alliance and great emperors from the three special tribe. The great emperors in Sanctuary Alliance naturally didn't dare to go against Emperor Bai's order. As for the great emperors from the three special tribe, they nodded faintly too. They also knew that it wasn't the way to continue in a stalemate situation. Jian Wushuang, how about you? Emperor Bai looked at Jian Wushuang. Sure, Jian Wushuang nodded. If it wasn't necessary, he, of course, wouldn't wish to really use the killer move to meet death together with the experts from Eternal Chaotic World. That's great. Emperor Bai waved. There was a lofty palace that appeared from nowhere. There were layers of prohibition over the palace. Come on in, Emperor Bai's voice reverberated while he entered the palace first. Sanctuary Alliance and the great emperors from the 3 special tribes entered the palace one after another. Jian Wushuang didn't hesitate and entered the palace as well. In the lofty hall, there were thrones towering. At the bottom half of the palace, there were dozens of thrones. The ruler of the bigger forces in Eternal Chaotic World sat there, including Emperor God Tianling from Soaring Heaven King Palace, number 1 Divine King from Divine King Island. The peak Emperor Gods were gathered there. Of course, these Emperor Gods, including Emperor God Tianling himself, were sure that they were only audience in the hall but had no right to speak. Those who had the right to speak were the great emperors who were seated on the upper half of the hall. V-room. There were shadows that substantiated one after another. Besides the great emperors who came from outside of Greenfire World, those who didn't come personally, their consciousness incarnation were there. The 15 great emperors on Heaven and Earth's supreme ranking list were there. The great emperors from special tribes were all there too. The most eye-catching thing was that the great emperors were all seated on the left side of the hall. On the right side of the hall, it obviously belonged to another camp. The camp was naturally led by Jian Wushuang. Next to him, there was Lord Spirit Sound, King Luo Yu and Jian Yi. Compared to the other camp, Jian Wushuang was really much weaker. However, with the existence of space-time storm, Jian Wushuang had great power too. As for Emperor Bai, he was seated in between both parties. Let's begin. Emperor Bai said softly, then he became silent. He even closed his eyes faintly. He obviously didn't intend to be biased. He had been aloof to begin with. He was always high and above. Although he was widely acknowledged as the strongest in Sanctuary Alliance, he was almost never involved in any matter in Sanctuary Alliance. An elder in a simple gray robe stood up. The gray-robed elder first bowed politely at Emperor Bai, then at other great emperors. Then he looked at Jian Wushuang and said, Sword Emperor, I am Tianqin. Ancestor Tianqin. Jian Wushuang greeted politely too. Ancestor Tianqin was in 4th place on Heaven and Earth's supreme ranking list, which was right behind Abysmal Saint Master. Most of the matters in Sanctuary Alliance for all these years were taken care of by Ancestor Tianqin and East Royal Emperor. Besides, Jian Wushuang also knew that Ancestor Tianqin was a great emperor who had a good opinion of him and anticipated for him to grow stronger when he had risen abruptly back then. Hence, Jian Wushuang revered Ancestor Tianqin. I believe Sword Emperor knows that I have always had high hopes for your growth. I am certain that Sword Emperor will definitely be one of the greatest fighting powers in Sanctuary Alliance in the future. The truth is as such too. Ancestor Tianqin first gave him compliments, then he said, however, Greenfire World is unusual. Its value and potential is too great. For Sanctuary Alliance, it would be of great help. Sword Emperor, you are also a member of Sanctuary Alliance. So, I wish, Sword Emperor, you could consider on Sanctuary Alliance's behalf. Sanctuary Alliance would definitely remember your contribution. Jian Wushuang grew in distress. Ancestor Tianqin, I am really a member of Sanctuary Alliance, but Sanctuary Alliance is an alliance that is free without restriction. Your goal is to fight against the 2 dark forces and those underlying dangers. What I could do is to help when Sanctuary Alliance is in trouble. To put it in an indecent way, Sanctuary Alliance is nothing much to me. However, Greenfire World is different. It is my root. You want me to abandon my hometown for Sanctuary Alliance? That'd be a joke. Even if I agreed, 1 billion cultivators in Greenfire World wouldn't. Jian Wushuang looked determined and his voice was extremely cold too. Sword Emperor, is there really no space for negotiation? Ancestor Tianqin frowned. Of course there is. Otherwise, I wouldn't sit here and talk to you, Jian Wushuang said in a deep voice. However, to get the space from me, you have to show your sincerity. You want the countless cultivators in Green Fire World to relocate and hand over Green Fire World? That's impossible. Don't even think about it. I wonder what Sword Emperor would like? Ancestor Tianqin said. Very simple. ID let the value of Green Fire World to be put to play in Sanctuary Alliance, but I have a few conditions, Jian Wushuang said. What conditions? Ancestor Tianqin and the experts looked at Jian Wushuang with full anticipation. The first condition is that almighties to real gods in eternal chaotic world absolutely can't step foot in Green Fire World, Jian Wushuang said directly. However, just as his condition was brought up, impossible. There was a great emperor that slammed the table and stood up from Sanctuary Alliance's side while there were many glares from the experts too. Jian Wushuang, you want Sanctuary Alliance to show sincerity and that is your attitude? Ancestor Tianqin stared at Jian Wushuang as his face grew grave. Almighties to real gods couldn't enter Green Fire World. In other words, only cultivators of universe gods level and below could enter. What was the difference from that to no one being able to enter? That was Jian Wushuang's sincerity? Don't be in a hurry. Listen to me. Jian Wushuang looked around with a cold look. Although the experts were raging with anger, they suppressed their anger to listen to Jian Wushuang's explanation. Actually, all of you misunderstood Green Fire World's value, Jian Wushuang smiled faintly. All of you thought Green Fire World's value was its unprecedented cultivation environment that was filled with intense spiritual influence of heaven and earth. You wanted to make Green Fire World into a sanctuary that surpassed Thunderbolt Island. But it actually wasted all Green Fire World's resources. Chapter 1979 Condition. Wasted its resources? The experts looked at Jian Wushuang. That's right. The cultivation environment in Green Fire World now is far beyond Eternal Chaotic World. However, the easiest thing to create in such a cultivation environment isn't peak expert but genius. Jian Wushuang lowered his voice. The more outstanding a place is, the higher the probability of giving birth to a genius. Just like the ancient times. During ancient times, the geniuses were as many as the clouds. It was far beyond our era. If we really want to compare, our batch of geniuses would at most be second grade if put in ancient times. We couldn't even be considered as first-grade geniuses. I believe everyone should know this clearly. Hearing what Jian Wushuang said, the experts at the scene became quiet. The ancient times, the most prosperous first era and the era that they were in, there were vast differences. Not only in terms of experts, but also in talent. There were countless geniuses in ancient times. Any one of them in the current era would be known as a miracle. Sword Emperor, what are you trying to say? Ancestor Tianqin creased his eyebrows and asked. Very simple. If Green Fire World were to be made as a cultivation sanctuary better than Thunderbolt, it would only benefit the higher experts in Eternal Chaotic World. Although it would help to increase the fighting power of the top experts tremendously, it wouldn't make any changes to the roots. If Green Fire World's value were to be put on the younger geniuses, it would be entirely different. Jian Wushuang's voice was loud and clear. I suggested the condition to not let any experts above real god level enter because I wanted to turn Green Fire World into the #1 genius sanctuary in Eternal Chaotic World, a genius cradle. ID give out a huge territory in Green Fire World. Sanctuary Alliance, special tribes and all forces in Eternal Chaotic World could send a batch of disciples to the territory. Then, as long as they never break through and become real gods, they can reside there. They can even reproduce there. Although there wouldn't be much of a visible effect in the short term, through generations of reproduction and inheritance, the later disciples would be more and more talented, more and more outstanding. There might even be people who possess a unique constitution in the future generation. Unique constitution? There were many who were surprised. That's right. As long as the cultivation condition is outstanding, some babies that have just been born will possess unique constitution, just like my father. He has the body of a sword spirit, which is rare. One of my brothers is a celestial elixir. This happened before Green Fire World transformed entirely. As the cultivation environment becomes more outstanding, the unique constitution born in Green Fire World is growing in number. Now, from what I know, among the cultivators in Green Fire World, there are more than 30 of them who have unique constitutions. There are many that have yet to be discovered, Jian Wushuang said. Many experts were dumbfounded. Unique constitution was what countless cultivators dreamed of in eternal chaotic world. Having a unique constitution was equal to having the requirement to be a peak expert. Then one was only required to work hard and obtain opportunities. For instance, the body of a sword spirit was born an expert in sword principle. If a celestial elixir reincarnated, he would only need sufficient resources to nurture. He was destined to become the top elixir maker. He could even become an elixir almighty. These were all unique constitutions that people were envious of. However, such constitutions were too rare in eternal chaotic world. Among the geniuses and experts in the 10 cultivation sanctuaries, the number of cultivators with unique constitutions could be counted on one's fingers. But then, in Green Fire World itself, there were more than 30 of them who possessed unique constitutions in Green Fire World. Just how unbelievable it was. The expert's eyes became green with envy. It was just as how Jian Wushuang had described, Green Fire World could totally become a genius cradle. If it was put to use appropriately, it could totally generate large number of top geniuses continuously. It could even be comparable to the First Era, or even the ancient times. If these geniuses grew stronger, even if among dozens of them or even hundreds of them, there was only one who really grew strong for real, Green Fire World could still continuously produce more experts in eternal chaotic world. It was of a much greater use in making a cultivation sanctuary. Sword Emperor, even if what you said is true, you do not allow any almighties or even a real god to enter Green Fire World. Only cultivators below universe god level are allowed to enter. When they enter Green Fire World, wouldn't they be under your control? By then, you can still do whatever you wish. From what I know, Green Fire World already has many real gods. If the cultivators from Sanctuary Alliance didn't even have any real gods in Green Fire World, wouldn't the cultivators from Green Fire World bully our men as they wish? Yen Zun suddenly said, "No one needs to worry about this. I can guarantee that no cultivators from Green Fire World will step foot in the territory that your cultivators are having, nor will they get involved in any affair in your territory. Plus, if you are really worried, I can take another step back. I will allow you to pick 10 almighties to form an alliance of 10 to attend garrison duty all year round. However, these 10 almighties could only be Sir Gods or Emperor Gods," Jian Wushuang said. The surrounding people were in deep thought. Only 10 almighties and only Sir Gods and Emperor Gods. They naturally couldn't restrict Jian Wushuang at all. However, it wouldn't be a problem to restrict the cultivators from Green Fire World. With the 10 almighties, it shouldn't be a problem to protect those who were below universe god level. As for Jian Wushuang, he naturally had Sanctuary Alliance and experts from various forces to guard against him. He shouldn't act recklessly too. Everyone, this is my first condition. I wonder if all of you agree with it? Jian Wushuang looked around. The great emperors immediately started their discussion. After a short discussion, Ancestor Tianqin spoke again. Sword Emperor, you do know that eternal chaotic world is huge? Sanctuary Alliance alone has great power, let alone the special tribes. Hence, the territory required definitely isn't small. To allocate how huge a territory for Sanctuary Alliance, special tribes and also various forces, we can talk about this later. I only want to know if everyone is willing to agree with my first condition to only send cultivators below real god level and have 10 Sir Gods or Emperor Gods form an alliance of 10 to step foot in Green Fire World. Jian Wushuang said. Yes, we can agree on this condition, Ancestor Tianqin nodded. Chapter 1980 Give an inch, take a mile. Jian Wushuang's eyes glowed with happiness when Ancestor Tianqin agreed. The first condition was actually the most important condition. The first condition included a crucial question, which was the control rights of Green Fire World over the years. If the experts from Sanctuary Alliance and special tribes were to be allowed to step foot in Green Fire World, then even if Jian Wushuang had the Grand Formation, it would be difficult for him to control Green Fire World. But now, only cultivators below real god level were allowed to enter. At most, only the Alliance of 10 would be there. Regardless of which Almighty's Sanctuary Alliance chose, as long as there wasn't a great emperor, Jian Wushuang would be able to suppress them. Green Fire World's actual control rights still belonged to him and belonged to Green Fire Palace. The cultivators from Green Fire World were still the owner. The moment the first condition was done, Jian Wushuang's goal had been achieved. Now, he needed to figure out a way to get the biggest advantage for cultivators in Green Fire World. Sword Emperor, tell us your other conditions. Ancestor Tianqin looked at Jian Wushuang. The Sanctuary Alliance and the few special tribes actually had no alternatives. Jian Wushuang, or it should be Green Fire World's final trump card, was too scary. They didn't have the guts to corner them too much. My second condition is that, from today, all cultivators who are wandering in this ancient battlefield will not step foot in the surrounding area in Green Fire World. In other words, within the huge skull that you saw through the pearl earlier, Jian Wushuang said in a deep voice. The moment he said that, many experts' faces changed. Through the pearl, they could see that the huge skull where Green Fire World was located was the core of the ancient battlefield. On top of that, the skull was huge and shocking. It definitely contained boundless opportunities. The attraction of the skill to these experts was far beyond any other places on the ancient battlefield. There were many experts who had already made up their minds that they'd wander on the skull after they dealt with the matter with Green Fire World. However, the condition that Jian Wushuang suggested was to prohibit them from entering the territory of the skull. Everyone, I'm afraid you don't know that Green Fire World has been nurtured by this ancient battlefield for many years, over 40,000 years. Over the years, the cultivators from Green Fire World had been wandering in the surrounding ancient battlefield, and the region that they wandered was mostly around the skull. In other words, 90% of the skull was already searched through by cultivators from Green Fire World, including myself. As for the opportunity in the skull, Jian Wushuang smiled but didn't finish his sentence. The experts at the scene heard and they were surprised again. Although they didn't truly believe in Jian Wushuang's speech, they could make their own judgment. Green Fire World had been on the battlefield for such a long time, and they definitely would search for the surrounding opportunities and treasure. It was normal that they would search through the area around the skull. Battlefield that had already been searched through. Even though they didn't find any opportunities, the value was not as high as they thought it was. Plus, everyone, please don't only think about yourself. Think about your disciples and juniors. If they intend to grow in Green Fire World, they will need a training ground. But a universe god could easily wander around the dangerous places in Green Fire World itself. There was no effective training. They naturally only could place their hope on the ancient battlefield. Hence, the territory that the skull took up, live for your younger disciples and the cultivators in Green Fire World. What do you think? Jian Wushuang smiled faintly. He sounded reasonable. But in actual fact, he knew clearly. At the territory where the skull was, there were boundless opportunities that had yet to be unearthed. However, he did so for the cultivators of Green Fire World. Of course, all forces in Eternal Chaotic World that allocated cultivators to the territory of Green Fire World definitely wouldn't reap the same advantages. The experts at the scene exchanged a look and they seemed a little hesitant. Then Emperor Bai, who sat in the middle, suddenly opened his white eyes. This condition is agreeable. Then he closed his eyes again. Emperor Bai spoke himself. Even though the experts hesitated, they never spoke again. They finally agreed to this condition as well. The third condition, Jian Wushuang looked at the surrounding people. I hoped that the experts who wandered in the ancient battlefield would give a certain amount of doctrine gem or resources of equivalent value to Green Fire World as rewards. You are asking for doctrine gem? How could you? Get an inch, want a mile. Everyone's faces changed and a few great emperors stood up in anger. Jian Wushuang, we have already comprised. Aren't you going a little overboard now? Ancestor Tianqin said in a deep voice. Overboard? Am I really overboard? Jian Wushuang scoffed. Everyone, do you think this ancient battlefield could be so stable all the time? For you to wander and search for opportunities at ease? Why don't you think about the grand formations surrounding the ancient battlefield? Without it, how would the ancient battlefield be? Everyone stunned. Without the grand formation, they naturally knew the outcome. They shivered in fear at the thought. Because the grand formation restricted the surrounding space-time storm and the ancient battlefield could be maintained without effect. Plus, the outstanding cultivation environment is also affected by the formation. You have to think about how many resources we Green Fire World has spent in order to maintain such an unbelievable formation. How much treasure? Do you think it's easy? Jian Wushuang humphed coldly. Many kept quiet when they heard what he said, especially those who were good with formations. The grand formation surrounding the ancient battlefield was simply unbelievable in their eyes. The stronger the formation, the greater the energy required to maintain it. The grand formation was so unbelievable. Hence, the resources required to maintain it would definitely be a sky-high number. Then, Jian Wushuang added, the grand formation was a huge burden. Previously, our cultivators from Green Fire World took turns to wander in the surrounding ancient battlefield to obtain resources and barely maintain the formation. But then, we handed over the ancient battlefield and only kept the territory where the skull was. The resources that we could get naturally diminished tremendously. At this time, if I didn't ask for resources from you, who else could I ask? Chapter 1981 Give Way. Jian Wushuang delivered an impassioned speech and spoke with confidence. He spoke with confidence because justice was on his side. There was a drastic change on the ancient battlefield and Green Fire World had such great value. It was all the work of the Grand Formation. Plus, the Grand Formation did stabilize the space-time storm. If there wasn't the Grand Formation, everything would just be empty talk. However, he didn't share one thing. The Grand Formation wasn't maintained by the energy provided by various resources and treasure. It had merged into one with the space-time storm. Hence, the energy source to maintain the formation was actually with the space-time storm. It was also the brilliant skill of the person who had created this formation, Jian Wushuang's master, Xian Yi. Over the years, Green Fire World had been manipulating the formation. In actual fact, they didn't need to spend any resources to manipulate the formation. He had said it required an enormous resource to maintain because he wanted to get more benefits for Green Fire World from the experts before him. Plus, whatever he said, the experts in front of him had to agree. As expected, East Royal Emperor from Sanctuary Alliance, who had studied intensively in formation, spoke. To maintain such a huge formation, the required resources are beyond one's imagination. Even to Sanctuary Alliance, it wouldn't be easy. Green Fire World would require a decent amount of resources and treasure to maintain the formation. It is pretty reasonable. Although the other experts were unwilling, they had no choice but to agree. Sword Emperor, tell us, how many doctrine gems? Ancestor Tianchen asked. Not many. Any almighty who enters the ancient battlefield once will need to pay 2,000 doctrine gems as payment, Jian Wushuang said. Pay attention. I meant per entry. In other words, regardless of how long you stay, tens of thousands of years, hundreds of thousands of years, as long as you don't leave, you only have to pay 2,000 doctrine gems. However, if you only stay on the ancient battlefield for a few hundred years or even a dozen years and you leave in between, you will still have to pay 2,000 doctrine gems when you enter again. I will allocate an expert to collect doctrine gems at the space gap that is connected to the ancient battlefield. The experts at the scene exchanged a look and nodded in silence. Only 2,000 doctrine gems, any top chaotic real god who was rich could easily pay. To almighties it was nothing. So, they could easily accept it. However, it was nothing if there was only one person paying 2,000 doctrine gems. However, the almighties from eternal chaotic world who could wander in this ancient battlefield numbered more than 1,000, and every one of them would pay 2,000 doctrine gem each. It would be a sky-high number if all added up. Plus, if they were to leave in between, they would have to pay doctrine gems again when they re-entered the ancient battlefield. To Green Fire World, it was simply a huge income. Sword Emperor, we agree with your 3 conditions, Ancestor Tianqin said. Don't be in a hurry. I have a 4th condition, Jian Wushuang smiled faintly. More? Ancestor Tianqin creased his eyebrows. Sword Emperor, don't you have too many conditions? Don't worry. The 4th condition has nothing to do with anyone's benefit. It is merely a personal matter. Jian Wushuang spoke, but his gaze turned cold. Green Fire World was obviously framed. We were nearly exterminated because of this. I naturally have to deal with this. Hence, my 4th condition is to wish for everyone to tell me, who is it that exposed the existence of the ancient battlefield and then pushed Green Fire World to the toughest point? Jian Wushuang's voice was cold, with a tinge of murderous intention. The experts on the spot let out a breath of relief. They thought Jian Wushuang was going to bring up some strict conditions, but he was merely looking for the person who had exposed the secret of the ancient battlefield. It had nothing to do with them, so they naturally didn't mind. I know that person. There was a cold voice. Everyone looked to the source of the voice. The person who spoke was Colored Glaze Great Emperor. Jian Wushuang wasn't surprised at that. Colored Glaze Emperor was the first to reach Green Fire World among all great emperors. Plus, when she reached Green Fire World, she called out his name straight away. She obviously already knew the actual situation in Green Fire World, and someone had definitely told her. The person who spread the news about this ancient battlefield and schemed against Green Fire World is a Sir God in Colored Glaze Sanctuary who has just broken through. Sir God Shui Dao, Colored Glaze Great Emperor said. Sir God Shui Dao? The experts at the scene revealed confused expressions. They obviously had never heard of Sir God Shui Dao. Sir God Shui Dao is Emperor God Xie Xin's junior disciple. Sword Emperor, you should know why he schemed against Green Fire World, right? Colored Glaze Great Emperor said. Jian Wushuang's gaze turned cold and he understood. Emperor God Xie Xin was the first person who had discovered the ancient battlefield. But in the end he had died by Jian Wushuang's hands. Before Emperor God Xie Xin died, he had definitely sent a message to Sir God Shui Dao, which had led to the following agenda. As Sir God Shui Dao is an almighty from Colored Glaze Sanctuary, I wonder if Colored Glaze Great Emperor would stop me if I wanted to kill him, Jian Wushuang asked. No, Colored Glaze Great Emperor answered. Sir God Shui Dao is very cunning. I was framed too. That's great, Jian Wushuang nodded. Sword Emperor, you don't have to do anything about Sir God Shui Dao personally. Sanctuary Alliance will figure out a way to capture him alive and send him to you. Even if he is killed by accident, we will send his dead body over too. What do you think? Ancestor Tianqin said. Thank you, Ancestor Tianqin. Jian Wushuang thanked him and said, that's all. As everyone agreed with my conditions, let's talk about the territory that Green Fire World will give out. Jian Wushuang immediately started another discussion with the great emperors. During the discussion, it was inevitable to go through haggling. But in the end, they reached a mutual agreement. Green Fire World would give 30% of their territory to the junior disciples from various forces in Eternal Chaotic World. Then they could continue to reproduce there. Green Fire World was huge and 30% of their territory was huge enough to take on a large number of cultivators. Of course, Sanctuary Alliance and Special Tribes initially wanted more territory, but Jian Wushuang was holding a strong position and it ended up with such an outcome after a fierce negotiation. Then, both parties reached a mutual agreement. Of course, both parties compromised in order to achieve a mutual agreement. However, they had no other alternative but to give way. After all, both parties had scruples. Chapter 1982 The Origins of Star Foggy Sea. Jian Wushuang represented the entire Green Fire World. Comparing Green Fire World to the entire Eternal Chaotic World, it was at a disadvantage. Green Fire World was too valuable. After Green Fire World was exposed, Jian Wushuang understood that Green Fire World had to give way. He used up all he could to protect the benefits of the cultivators in Green Fire World. Although Green Fire World gave out 30% territory, Green Fire World was finally under his control. They kept the ancient battlefield where the skull was, where the green fire world was located. On top of that, experts from various forces had to pay a certain amount of doctrine gems and supplement some resources that green fire world needed. That was good enough. As for Sanctuary Alliance and Special Tribe, because they were worried that Jian Wushuang would fight at the risk of mutual destruction, worried about the formation that blended with the space-time storm, they had no choice but to compromise. Dealing with a space-time storm that could instantly wipe out the entire ancient battlefield and all experts at the scene, they couldn't be aggressive. After they reached a mutual agreement, experts from various forces left and made their own preparations. One thing for sure was that Sanctuary Alliance, Special Tribes and various forces in Eternal Chaotic World had to discuss how many cultivators below real god level could head into Green Fire World. Also, they would have to discuss who would make up the Alliance of 10. All those would go through some arguments. Of course, that had nothing to do with Jian Wushuang. In the lofty palace, Jian Wushuang, Emperor Bai, who closed his eyes and never spoke, finally opened his eyes. Mr. Emperor Bai, Jian Wushuang immediately looked at Emperor Bai. I never thought that your hometown would be on this ancient battlefield. If I am not mistaken, Emperor 13 should be formed on this ancient battlefield, right? Emperor Bai asked. Yes, Jian Wushuang nodded. As expected, Emperor Bai smiled faintly. He then said, I heard that your power has improved tremendously over the years. How far away are you from the 7th step? I am very close, Jian Wushuang answered. I see, Emperor Bai creased his eyebrows and said, although I know it is about luck to break through, I hope you could break through sooner. After all, Eternal Chaotic World is becoming more and more unstable. The two hidden dark forces continuously popped out one after another. If I'm not mistaken, in no time, the two hidden dark forces will take major action. Jian Wushuang was shocked and he immediately nodded, I understand. Jian Wushuang bid farewell soon after. After Jian Wushuang left the palace, he plunged in the direction of Green Fire World. Before he got close to Green Fire World, Jian Nantian, Wang Yuan, Su Rou and the others who had been waiting for very long in Green Fire World greeted him. Shuang, how did it go? Jian Nantian asked closely. Third brother. The others looked at Jian Wushuang. All their gazes were filled with anticipation. Jian Wushuang smiled faintly. It's okay. A simple reply made all cultivators in Green Fire World be filled with excitement. One should know that all of them viewed death unflinchingly and wanted to fight at a risk of mutual destruction. They had already prepared to die in the battle. But then, they were fine? Everything had been solved? Really? Wang Yuan found it unbelievable. Of course, Jian Wushuang smiled and looked at Jian Nandan. Father, please gather all higher-ups in Green Fire World for a discussion. All right, Jian Nandan nodded and immediately went to make the arrangement. Jian Wushuang brought King Luo Yu and Lord Spirit Sound to a remote void. King Luo Yu, Lord Spirit Sound, thank you so much. Jian Wushuang expressed his gratitude. Lord Spirit Sound shrugged but didn't say much. King Luo Yu said solemnly, Sword Emperor, you are welcome. We of Ancient God Tribe value bloodlines the most. You have our royal bloodline and you should be our new emperor. I wonder when Sword Emperor will follow me back to Ancient God Tribe? Ancient God Tribe? Jian Wushuang couldn't help but smile. You can tell that I am very busy now. Wait for a while. Until Green Fire World and the Ancient Battlefield stable down, I will head down to visit Ancient God Tribe. Alright, this is my communication token. When Sword Emperor reaches Ancient God Tribe, send me a message directly. King Luo Yu passed Jian Wushuang his token and he left. From the beginning until the end, King Luo Yu had revered Jian Wushuang from the bottom of his heart. After King Luo Yu left, Jian Wushuang looked at Lord Spirit Sound again. Lord Spirit Sound, it has been so long. There are many things that I am confused about. I wonder if you could answer them for me. Sure. Go ahead and ask, Lord Spirit Sound replied with a faint smile. She knew that Jian Wushuang would definitely ask her some questions. She was well prepared. Lord Spirit Sound, you should know what I want to ask, right? Jian Wushuang looked at Lord Spirit Sound. Firstly, it's about where you are from. If I'm not mistaken, Lord Spirit Sound shouldn't be related to lineage of star at all. Previously, you said that you controlled star Foggy Sea to select disciple for lineage of star. I'm afraid that's not the truth, right? That's right. I am not related to lineage of star at all. As for controlling star Foggy Sea, someone wanted me to do that, Lord Spirit Sound said. Who? Jian Wushuang asked closely. Shinke. You should know this, Lord Spirit Sound smiled. Jian Wushuang was surprised when he heard the name Xian. As expected, Jian Wushuang sighed. He had already guessed so in his head. As for where I am from, I think you could guess it too. I am from the surrounding battlefield, as are the cultivators from ancient times that you were talking about. However, I was only a small figure in ancient times. I somehow or other got involved in the war back then. Back then, the war darkened the sky and obscured everything. Countless terrifying existences passed away. Although I got involved in the war, I was lucky. At least, I survived, Lord Spirit Sound said. Although I survived, I was in bad shape. I was in a deep sleep in the depths of this ancient battlefield. I had no alternative until I met the mysterious expert named Xian. He woke me up and helped me to recover my power. As an exchange, I have to control Star Foggy Sea on his behalf until someone can pass the final test in Star Foggy Sea. Then I will gain my freedom. As for the excuse of manipulating Star Foggy Sea on behalf of the Master of Star Palace, it was instructed by Xian. I don't even know what lineage of star is, so why would I control Star Foggy Sea on their behalf? Chapter 1983 Turning Point. Actually, Star Foggy Sea was in Green Fire World so long ago. It should be Xian Yi that took it over through some method. I only needed to take care of Star Foggy Sea on his behalf and lied that I was taking care of it for lineage of star. As for the rest, you should know them. Lord Spirit Sound said and then looked at Jian Wushuang. Jian Wushuang squinted his eyes and asked, As you are an expert from ancient times, do you not know Xian Yi? No, Lord Spirit Sound shook her head. I was only a small figure back then. If I were to be put on the battlefield, I would be just like an ordinary soldier. I might not even be a soldier. But as for Xian Yi, although I saw him back then, I felt that he was very weak, his skills were far beyond mine. I am sure that he was a big figure back in ancient times. Such a big figure is not someone I would know. Jian Wushuang was astonished. Lord Spirit Sound and Jian Yi were the same. They were only small figures in ancient times. The kind that drew no attention. Jian Wushuang was at least a spy back then. Hence, he had heard of Xian Yi. Lord Spirit Sound had never even heard Xian Yi's name. I understand now. Thank you for telling me, Lord Spirit Sound, Jian Yi said. Like I said, you don't have to be so polite, Lord Spirit Sound smiled. Oh yeah, you'll be staying in Green Fire World for a while. In no time, I will be wandering in the surrounding battlefield. This is my communication token. If you were to run into any trouble, send me a message. Okay, Jian Wushuang accepted the token straight away. In the vast void of Green Fire World, all rulers of various forces in Green Fire World, including the higher-ups, gathered together. In one glance, there were at least a few hundred people. Jian Wushuang sat on a lofty throne right in the middle of the crowd. Everyone, Jian Wushuang's voice was loud and clear. It spread. The experts from Eternal Chaotic World came and cast greedy eyes over Green Fire World and its boundless potential. They attempted in vain to conquer Green Fire World. However, as they are worried about Green Fire World's biggest trump card, they have already retreated. Plus, I had a discussion with them and we compromised and came to a mutual agreement. As for the content of the agreement, Jian Wushuang went through the conditions in detail. Then, the void was in a temporary silence. Give 30% of our territory? Many cultivators in Green Fire World frowned. 30% of their territory was quite vast. Plus, there were countless cultivators that lived in 30% of the territory. To Green Fire World, it definitely was a huge price to pay. However, most of them understood that Green Fire World's strength was weak before various forces from Eternal Chaotic World. They were simply not worth mentioning. If the other party didn't care about Green Fire World's final trump card, Green Fire World might not even have the capital to negotiate. Then, Green Fire World had only lost 30% of their territory and they kept their location at the skull on the ancient battlefield. From then on, they would receive many doctrine gems and resources too. It was already a great outcome. They believed that Wushuang City Master might play a major factor in it. If it was any other person who had gone for negotiation, one should know that the strongest person in Green Fire World was only a real god. A real god dealing with a bunch of almighties, and even great emperors might not even lift their heads to look at the other party, let alone bringing up terms and conditions. Only the legendary Jian Wushuang from Green Fire World had the guts and had the qualifications to negotiate with the entire Sanctuary Alliance, the countless experts from Eternal Chaotic World. Father, Brother Wang Yuan, you go ahead and arrange for the 30% territory. Try to complete the reallocation of cultivators in Green Fire World within 100 years. If I'm not mistaken, the cultivators that Eternal Chaotic World sent will be arriving one after another the next few hundred years, Jian Wushuang said. Okay, Jian Nantian and Wang Yuan nodded simultaneously. Jian Wushuang took a deep breath and suddenly looked at the cultivators in front of him. But, are you not happy with this? Jian Wushuang's voice was cold. He saw many people had lowered their heads. Of course, they were unhappy about it. Green Fire World was their hometown, but they had no choice but to give the other party 30% of their territory. If it wasn't because of their trump cards, the countless cultivators in Green Fire World would have to leave their home to head to other territories. However, they didn't dare to say much. Actually, I feel the same. I am unhappy too. But I have no alternative. We of Green Fire World are at a disadvantage, Jian Wushuang said coldly. Eternal Chaotic World is much bigger than Green Fire World and they have many more experts. Almighties alone, there were more than 1,000 of them from Eternal Chaotic World who came to the ancient battlefield. On the other hand, there isn't even one almighty that grows up from Green Fire World. Don't look at me. Although I have the power of an almighty, I really didn't reach the level in terms of the realm. Jian Wushuang paused and then continued, with such power, what qualifications do we have to fight against various forces in Eternal Chaotic World and Sanctuary Alliance? Everyone went quiet. The law of the jungle, they knew the theory very well. Wherever they were, they spoke with fists. Jian Wushuang looked at everyone's expressions and then he smiled. However, don't worry too much. Green Fire World has just started to rise and we are really not comparable to Eternal Chaotic World. However, Green Fire World has great potential, far beyond the cultivators in Eternal Chaotic World. That is also the reason why they tried so hard to conquer Green Fire World. With time, everyone here, including the disciples under your lead, as long as they are willing to put in effort, the overall power in Green Fire World will advance by leaps and bounds. We can take back those that belong to us. Everyone clenched their hands when they heard his speech, and their eyes were filled with hope. There was fighting spirit that ignited in their hearts. That scene happened to be what Jian Wushuang wanted to see. Regardless of what Green Fire World went through, it didn't matter. However, the fighting spirit of the cultivators in Green Fire World, their unyieldingness absolutely couldn't be diminished. As long as they continued to grow in their unyieldingness, Green Fire World would reach the level that he was talking about. Then, Wang Yuan spoke again. Actually, although Green Fire World paid a great price, we removed the initial danger anyway. Yes, Jian Wushuang's eyes were shimmering with joy. The danger had been removed. Ever since he found out that Emperor God Xie Xian had discovered the ancient battlefield, he had been worried. Especially when the ancient battlefield and Green Fire World was exposed, Jian Wushuang became even more tense as he was worried that Green Fire World would take a damaging hit. He had been trying to figure out ways and he put in his biggest effort. When he was negotiating with experts from Eternal Chaotic World, he was also trying his best to get the biggest benefits for Green Fire World. Then both parties reached a mutual agreement and everything was decided. Although they had given out 30% of their territory, at least they managed to keep Green Fire World. We kept Green Fire World. I managed to keep it in the end. I risked my life back then for Green Fire World. I risked everything for all my ancestors. I didn't disappoint any of you. Jian Wushuang clenched his hands. At the same time, his constantly worrying mind finally relaxed. The relief wasn't only in his divine body, but he was entirely at ease. But the sudden relief caused Jian Wushuang's heart to skip a beat. This feeling. Jian Wushuang's eyes were wide opened. He had experienced this feeling multiple times ever since he had started cultivating. He naturally wouldn't find it foreign. This was a feeling of having a breakthrough. It was time. He had been in ultimate real God stage for so many years, and it was finally time for a breakthrough. Chapter 1984. 1984 Breakthrough. Jian Wushuang had been too tense. He was too stressed. The life and death of Green Fire World had been upon him previously, and he hadn't dared to lower his guard and act recklessly. After all, with the difference of one step, Green Fire World would be doomed forever. Now, Green Fire World was finally safe. The danger had been removed and there would be no trouble. Jian Wushuang finally relaxed. However, the sudden relaxation fully enlightened Jian Wushuang. The bottleneck in his body finally loosened up. He was going to break through. I have something urgent. I have to cultivate in seclusion immediately. Father, Brother Wang Yuan, please take care of the rest of the matter, Jian Wushuang exhorted. No problem. Jian Nantian and Wang Yuan nodded heavily. Jian Yi, assist them with all you can, Jian Wushuang commanded. Yes, master, Jian Yi replied politely. After that, Jian Wushuang immediately returned to his secret room in Wushuang City. In the secret room, Jian Wushuang sat there while billowing divine power swept out madly. A turning point is hard to come to. If I were to miss it, no one would know how long it would take until I got the next chance. Hence, regardless, I have to break through. Jian Wushuang clenched his hand and closed his eyes. He started focusing on getting onto the 7th step in reverse cultivation. Just as Jian Wushuang was breaking through in seclusion, Green Fire World and various forces in Eternal Chaotic World were making arrangements according to their mutual agreement. Firstly, Green Fire World gave out 30% of their territories. When the higher-ups in Green Fire World announced it and started execution, it stirred up a great commotion within Green Fire World. There were countless cultivators who were raging with anger, especially the cultivators who were located within the 30% territories. There was a vast surge of public feeling. Many of them were unwilling and they caused short-term chaos within Green Fire World. However, the chaos gradually settled down as Jian Nantian and Wang Yuan led the 9 major forces to suppress and comfort them. The cultivators who were at the bottom might not have known the ins and outs of the story and thus they couldn't understand. But at least, the cultivators who were more powerful knew how helpless and difficult it was for the higher-ups in Green Fire World. The cultivators who were located within the territories relocated to other region under the allocation of the higher-ups. Within a dozen years, the cultivators within the 30% territory were completely relocated. Besides, the higher-ups from Green Fire World even set up a great formation within the 30% territory. They even told the cultivators from Green Fire World that they were prohibited to step foot in the 30% territory. As for the cultivators in the 30% territory, Green Fire World didn't care if they could exit. After all, besides the 10 Almighties, the cultivators in the 30% territory were all below real God level. Even if they came out, they couldn't dream about making trouble within Green Fire World. Within 100 years, Green Fire World had already completed all necessary arrangements. On the other hand, Sanctuary Alliance, special tribes and various forces from Eternal Chaotic World went through a dozen discussions and it took almost a decade until they reached a mutual agreement on the number of cultivators that they could send. Then only they started preparation. When Green Fire World was ready, they selected 100 million of cultivators from various forces in Eternal Chaotic World to move to Green Fire World. 100 million sounded like it was a huge number. However, compared to the boundless cultivators in the vast Eternal Chaotic World, it was so few. It was just like a drop of water in the ocean. In any ordinary big world in Eternal Chaotic World, the number of cultivators was far greater than this number. However, various forces in Eternal Chaotic World knew that the first batch of cultivators to Green Fire World should have higher quality than quantity. In terms of numbers, 100 million cultivators could definitely increase by 10 or 100 times after reproduction. However, various forces had to ensure the first batch of cultivators that they sent possessed a certain level of talent. In other words, the 100 million cultivators had to be geniuses in their own force or sect. A total of 100 million cultivators. Just as they were transporting the 100 million cultivators into Green Fire World, there was a problem that arose. It was their travel route. Various forces in Eternal Chaotic World had originally intended to send their geniuses to Green Fire World through the space gap in Ancient Mystery Land. Very quickly, they realized that it was impossible. After all, the space gap wasn't a wormhole that had stable spacetime. Almighties or real gods who were more powerful could rely on their personal power to shuttle through the space gap forcibly. However, the geniuses weren't even cultivators above real god level. How could they travel through the space gap? The 100 million geniuses, there might be 90% of them who would die in the space gap. Just as all forces in Eternal Chaotic World were deeply distressed about that, Jian Nantian informed them another route to enter Green Fire World on behalf of Green Fire World. They had to enter through Dayu World in Snow Kingdom. When they arrived outside the spacetime storm, they could pass through Green Fire World formation to enter the ancient battlefield. However, according to Jian Nantian, it wouldn't be easy to open the formation. On top of that, they had to transport a total of 100 million cultivators. Hence, as an exchange, various forces in Eternal Chaotic World paid a large amount of Doctrine Gem to Green Fire World again as compensation. As the 100 million cultivators from Eternal Chaotic World resided in the 30% territory and started reproducing, Green Fire World finally settled down. From then on, Green Fire World and the cultivators living in the 30% territory lived their own lives without getting involved. Both parties were utilizing the environment in Green Fire World to grow. On the ancient battlefield, all experts continued to wander and search for opportunities. However, due to the previous agreement, no Almighties dared to enter the territory where the huge skull was located. Whoever barged in without permission and was detected would be exterminated by Sanctuary Alliance, special tribes, and various forces. No one had the guts to go against the rules. The ancient battlefield finally steadied. The time flew past. In the blink of an eye, the agreement between Green Fire World and Eternal Chaotic World had been running for 3,000 years. Jian Wushuang had also been cultivating in seclusion for 3,000 years until then. Hong! There was loud thunder, and Jian Wushuang, who had been cultivating in the secret room, suddenly quivered and his eyes shot open. There was unprecedented joy in his eyes. I spent 3,000 years and I finally leaped over. 7th step of inverse cultivation, Chaotic Supreme. I did it. Chapter 1985. 1985 Chaotic Supreme, the 7th step of inverse cultivation. Almighty level. In ancient times, the level was named as Chaotic Realm. In inverse cultivation, it was called Chaotic Supreme. Right at the moment that he broke through and leaped to the step, Jian Wushuang's divine body and divine power was transforming at a shocking speed. Especially his divine body. This feeling? Jian Wushuang was surprised. He realized that his divine body had started collapsing. Yes, collapsing. Without any influence from the outside, he had broken through and his divine body had started collapsing. Of course, such a collapse was necessary to be reborn. Virum. Jian Wushuang's divine body completely collapsed and became a bolt of energy that dispersed in the void. There was only his heart that was floating in the air, and the heart contained boundless light. Jian Wushuang's consciousness and soul were in the heart too. Then voila! An enormous amount of pure energy swept towards the heart from all directions. Jian Wushuang's divine body gradually recovered again. It first collapsed, then recovered. It was reorganization. Divine body reorganization, from limbs and organs to pores and cells, everything resubstantiated. Jian Wushuang also noticed that the reorganization was completely purely with divine power. Merely divine power had substantiated a divine body. Transformation. From the beginning to the end, he had transformed completely. The moment his new divine body was reorganized, Jian Wushuang could tell that his reorganized divine body was unusual. At the same time, Jian Wushuang was recalling the information about the seventh step inverse cultivation. The seventh step of inverse cultivation, chaotic supreme, completed the perfect chaotic divine body. A perfect chaotic divine body would be immune to poison, water and fire, and be immortal. The biggest difference between a seventh step of inverse cultivation cultivator and an ordinary cultivator was the perfect chaotic divine body. The perfect chaotic divine body was a constitution. A unique supreme constitution that could make everyone feel visibly moved. The constitution was enough to shock the world. Jian Wushuang knew about the seventh step inverse cultivation, and he also knew about the perfect chaotic divine body. However, he didn't know how impressive the perfect chaotic divine body was. Just then, merely at the beginning of his transformation, he was shocked. In the process of his divine body reorganizing, time continued to fly past. In the blink of an eye, 1 month's time passed. His divine body completely reorganized and transformation ended. He truly became an almighty as an inverse cultivator. In the secret room, Jian Wushuang continued to sit cross-legged. Then both his hands were like lightning. The original 7 ancient tribes star in between his eyebrows became 8. Just as he broke through and reached the 7th step, his ancient tribe bloodline enhanced again in the process when his divine body reorganized. Jian Wushuang didn't bother with the 8th ancient tribe star then, but he focused on his divine body. He looked at his hands as he felt the energy-fueled divine body. His eyes were glistening with joy. This is the perfect chaotic divine body? This is the 7th step of inverse cultivation? Jian Wushuang muttered, and he was excited. He had completed his transformation and he could feel his divine body was special. That was why he was surprised. Let's head out to give it a try. Jian Wushuang suppressed his excitement and appeared in an independent space. Jian Wushuang stood in the boundless dark void quietly while there was another figure in front of him. The person was Jian Yi. 3,000 years passed and Jian Yi's power was only slightly behind his peak status. He would need at least 2,000 years more until he recovered his power to its peak. Jian Yi's fighting power shouldn't be weaker than Abysmal Saint Master when he recovered to his peak. He might even be stronger than Abysmal Saint Master. Jian Yi, give me your all and fight with me. Jian Wushuang clasped his hands together when he said, "Yes." Jian Yi nodded. Then, Jian Wushuang and Jian Yi launched an attack simultaneously. Jian Wushuang didn't draw his sword and only punched with his right hand. His fist brought about pure divine power after his transformation on the 7th step of inverse cultivation. A simple punch formed a terrifying storm and tore up the surrounding dark void at ease. Then, it revealed a space black hole that was a few 100,000 miles wide. Jian didn't go easy on him either. He punched and exploded his divine power of one in peak chaotic realm. Both parties didn't use unique skills or secret skills. It was purely a competition of strength. Bang! There was a loud bang and the independent space seemed to have exploded and it trembled in balance. Jian Wushuang's body grew heavy and he took a few steps back. As for Jian Yi, he only took 1 step back. Judging by his look, it was obvious that Jian Yi had the upper hand. "Jian Yi, did you exert all your strength?" Jian Wushuang asked. "Yes." Jian Yi nodded solemnly. Jian Wushuang was surprised when he heard that. Jian Yi was an expert from ancient times. His divine power was extremely pure. Even though he had yet to recover to his peak, his power was stronger than any ordinary great emperor's. But Jian Wushuang's divine power was only slightly weaker when they collided directly. From this result, it could be said that his divine power strength could be comparable to an ordinary great emperor's. I stepped foot on the 7th step and my divine power increased tremendously. Previously, my divine power was at Emperor God level and now I can compare to a great emperor favorably, Jian Wushuang smiled. One should know that it was purely the power of divinity. His strength was not only relying on divine power alone. Jian, let's do it again. You continue to use all your strength, but be more careful this time, Jian Wushuang reminded him with a smile. Then, there was billowing divine power concentrating in his right hand. At the same time, his fierce ancient tribe bloodline power had already reached the 8-star level. Come on. Jian Wushuang laughed and took a stride forward. Then he punched directly without any other moves. Jian Yi also punched like lightning to give full play to his power. Bang! There was another loud bang. However, it was Jian Yi who stumbled and fell backward for quite a distance. Jian Wushuang didn't even take a step back. It was obvious that Jian Wushuang absolutely had the upper hand. As expected, there was excitement glistening in Jian Wushuang's eyes as he looked at his right hand. In terms of divine power explosion, I can compare to an ordinary great emperor favorably. With the addition of ancient tribe bloodline power, my strength might be stronger by a notch than an ordinary emperor god's. Among the 15 great emperors on the Heaven and Earth Supreme ranking list, forget about Emperor Bai for now, my strength might be able to compare favorably with Red Dragon King, who is in second place. Chapter 1986. 1986 Unrivaled. Unmatched. Red Dragon King, the second place on Heaven and Earth Supreme ranking list. He was second to Emperor Bai. Red Dragon King was known for his fierce power. The other great emperors, besides Emperor Bai, were all weaker than him. In terms of strength explosion, Jian Wushuang was stronger than an ordinary great emperor by one notch. Although he might not have been able to compare favorably with Red Dragon King, he could at least be his match. Divine power is at this level. Next, let me see my divine body. Jian Wushuang was very excited. His divine body had just been through reorganization. He could feel that his divine body was very strong and peculiar. However, he would need to check to know which level he was at. Jian Yi hit me with your all, Jian Wushuang said. Attack you? Master? Jian Yi creased his eyebrows. When I tell you to, you should just do it. You shouldn't be in doubt. Jian Wushuang smiled and he looked rather confident. Jian Yi didn't hesitate anymore. He moved and appeared before Jian Wushuang. He then punched Jian Wushuang's chest with his right hand. There was a fierce power that formed. Jian Wushuang stood there but didn't move an inch. His divine body wasn't affected at all. Jian Yi, how much strength did you use? Jian Wushuang creased his eyebrows and asked. 50%, Jian Yi answered. He, of course, didn't dare to use his full force when he was attacking his master. Do it again. This time use full force. On top of that, you can use unique skills, Jian Wushuang commanded. It wasn't because he was arrogant, but he was really confident. At least, the earlier punch was like scratching an itch. He didn't feel it much. Yes. Jian Yi nodded. Jian didn't hold back that time. He used 100% of his strength. There was a cloud churning around his body and boundless crimson cloud permeated his palm. The crimson palm slammed into Jian Wushuang without hindrance. The billowing power was terrifying. Even a peak emperor god could be easily killed with that slam. Jian Wushuang didn't intend to dodge the palm at all. Bang! The crimson palm slammed Jian Wushuang and it was 10 times stronger than Jian Yi's earlier punch. Even so, Jian Wushuang only took one step back and his expression still looked rather relaxed. This palm could barely move me. It is not enough to hurt me. Jian Wushuang shook his head. How about this? Jian Wushuang had a thought in his mind. The 5-gem armor that he had always been wearing shrunk and appeared on his palm. He then put it away in his Qian Kun ring. I will not wear any armor, I'll just take the hit with my divine body. Give it a try again, Jian Wushuang smiled. 5-gem armor was a treasure given to him by an ancient tribe expert, Wu Hun. Although it was broken, its defensive power was above any ordinary chaotic divine treasure. For instance, 5-gem armor could cut down Jian Yi's attack by 90%. Jian Yi naturally couldn't hurt him. Hence, he wouldn't be able to examine his current divine power strength. So, he decided to take off his 5-gem armor directly. Master, are you sure about this? Jian Yi hesitated. Don't talk rubbish. Just do it, Jian Wushuang smiled. Jian Yi let out a sigh and he attacked again without hesitation. He used the same move, the same crimson palm that contained terrifyingly strong power. Again, Jian Wushuang didn't block the attack at all. The crimson palm hit Jian Wushuang's divine body again. The terrifying power impacted Jian Wushuang's divine body. The power strangled everything madly and it tore a big hole in Jian Wushuang's chest. There were some organs that shattered into pieces too. Master, this? Jian looked distressed. However, Jian Wushuang, who had a big opening on his chest, smiled and said, "Don't worry, I won't die." Just as he said, Jian Yi saw Jian Wushuang's divine power churning and recovered his open chest and also the shattered internal organs in an instant. Everything became undamaged again and Jian Wushuang's fighting power stayed at its peak. Hit me again, and this time hit me harder. It'd be best if you could shatter my divine body entirely. Jian Wushuang looked at Jian. Yes, Jian Yi wasn't in doubt anymore. As Jian Yi launched another attack, Jian Wushuang's divine body collapsed and became a cloud of crimson fog. Under such circumstances, an ordinary cultivator would have been dead. But Jian Wushuang... V-Room. There was boundless divine power that reorganized. In an instant, Jian Wushuang's figure appeared in the void again. As expected, Jian Wushuang clenched his hands. A perfect chaotic divine body is completely substantiated by divine power. As long as divine power is inexhaustible, no matter how great the damage to the divine body is, it can be recovered. Even if my divine body were to collapse entirely, it could be reorganized and resubstantiate with divine power again. Jian Wushuang was filled with excitement. As long as divine power was inexhaustible, even if the divine body were to collapse entirely, it could be reorganized. What is this? This is immortality. Back then, when Jian Wushuang had been on the third step of inverse cultivation, eternal realm, he had a power that was extremely close to immortality. It was an unprecedented life force. As long as there was flesh, he could recover himself with time. However, as he was on the seventh step, he truly possessed immortality. Immortality allowed him to have no scruples during fierce fights. No matter how badly injured he was, even if his divine body collapsed, he could reorganize it and continue to battle. As long as his divine power was inexhaustible, he wouldn't die. Of course, when his divine body collapsed, it would be a huge expense to his divine power to reorganize it. Jian Wushuang noticed that he had used up almost 1/4 of his divine power whenever he reorganized his divine body. In other words, his divine body could at most be reorganized 4 times during a fight. But even so, he could be recognized as being in defiance of nature. He could reorganize his divine body 4 times. It meant that he had 4 extra lives. He could be killed for 4 times. Just how ridiculous was that? Plus, he was only on the 7th step of inverse cultivation and merely the first stage of the 7th step. It equaled Sir God level in almighty rank. Then, he could continue to proceed to the 2nd stage, the 3rd stage. By then, his divine power and divine body would improve further. When he reached the 3rd stage, the final stage of the 7th step, his divine power would be boundless. It would be enough for him to reorganize his divine body a dozen times or more. By then, immune to poison, water, and fire, and he's immortal. This is the perfect chaotic divine body. Unrivaled, unmatched. Jian Wushuang bellowed at the bottom of his heart as his eyes glowed with excitement. Chapter 1987 Exit Seclusion. Terrifying. Scary. It was absolutely accurate to describe him as unrivaled. Jian Wushuang finally understood how Emperor Bai could be high and mighty. He understood why the great emperors from the Second Era didn't even have the courage to taunt him. He also understood why Emperor Bai wasn't afraid even though he had dealt with Emperor 13 and knew that his opponent might be stronger than himself. Because Emperor Bai had been unrivaled long ago. Emperor Bai was also an inverse cultivator and had already stepped foot on the 7th step of inverse cultivation. Plus, he should be on the ultimate stage of the 7th step. His divine power was boundless and enough for him to collapse 10 times and to remain alive. On top of that, he had extremely strong power. Even though his opponent might be much stronger than him, it was absolutely impossible for his opponent to kill him. Because he was invincible, he was unrivaled. I just stepped foot on the 7th step of inverse cultivation, and my divine power could only support me reorganizing my divine body 4 times. I still can't be considered undefeatable, but at least I will be fearless towards the 2nd era. Jian Wushuang said in a deep voice. He didn't mention the ancient times or the 1st era. Merely in the 2nd era itself, he was absolutely unstoppable. Dealing with the great emperors in the 2nd era, like Red Dragon King, Abysmal Saint Master, Great Emperor Zisu and so on, even if Jian Wushuang couldn't win against them, he didn't have to be fearful of them, because even if the great emperors were to join forces to kill him, it would still be difficult. Besides, after reaching the 7th step of inverse cultivation, there was a secret skill that Jian Wushuang could perform. The secret skill was naturally the strongest secret skill of body refinery by the ancient tribe, immemorial celestial body. He had obtained the secret skill long ago, but he hadn't had the qualifications to cultivate it. But now, the strongest secret skill of body refinery. Even compared to the secret skills of body refinery from ancient times, immemorial celestial body could be listed in the top 10. Such a secret skill. Even if it is just the 1st volume, it would enable my divine body and divine power to reach a brand new level once I cultivate it. By then my power will improve tremendously too. Jian Wushuang clenched his hands. However, although he had the qualifications to cultivate the secret skill then, he would need some time to cultivate the 1st volume successfully. I shall take my time. After all, I fully comprehended the 1st volume of immemorial celestial body long ago. Even though there are a few procedures that are more difficult, I could definitely cultivate the 1st volume of the secret skill successfully within a few thousand years. Jian Wushuang smiled. Jian Wushuang understood his constitution of the perfect chaotic divine body and also his current power. He didn't further verify them but exited seclusion. In the lofty hall, Jian Wushuang sat on a throne. Jian Nantian, Wang Yuan, Su Rou and the others gathered by his side. Shuang, judging from your aura, you've broken through again? Jian Nantian looked at Jian Wushuang as his eyes shimmered with joy. I just broke through, Jian Wushuang nodded with a smile. That's great. They were thrilled with excitement. Green Fire World finally has an almighty, Wang Yuan cheered. Although Jian Wushuang was attending garrison personally duty in Green Fire World and he had Jian Yi under him, regardless of if it was Jian Yi or Lord Sound Spirit who had assisted Jian Wushuang, they weren't people from Green Fire World after all. It was only Jian Wushuang who was from Green Fire World. Although Jian Wushuang had great fighting power then, he had yet to reach Almighty Realm. Green Fire World had yet to give birth to an Almighty. Now they finally had. Father, you should be nearing a breakthrough soon, right? I could feel your soul power growing so quickly. I think you should be able to substantiate a substantive soul soon, Jian Wushuang commented. It should be soon. Within 10,000 years, I'm guessing, Jian Nantian replied. Everyone was surprised at having more great news. Jian Wushuang raised his eyebrows too. All right, everyone, tell me what happened during the time when I was cultivating in seclusion, Jian Wushuang asked. Then, everyone immediately reported what had happened in the past 3,000 years briefly. In the past 3,000 years, Green Fire World had faintly settled down. Various forces and experts from Eternal Chaotic World had sent 100 million geniuses to the 30% territory. After reproduction for 3,000 years, the number had increased by a dozen times. Just as Jian Wushuang had expected, the people who were born in Green Fire World were much more gifted than those who had been born in other parts of Eternal Chaotic World. Plus, they were getting more and more outstanding through the generations. The 30% territory was given a name of Myriad Noble Region while the remaining 70% territory was known as Green Fire Region. The two territories were bound by the agreement and they hardly had dealings with one another. They naturally had conflicts. On top of that, cultivators from both parties were growing at a shocking speed. Especially the geniuses. There were too many geniuses across Green Fire World now. It included many who possessed special constitutions. However, because there were too many geniuses, most of them would opt to train themselves in Eternal Chaotic World after they reached Universe God level. On the ancient battlefield, the passion of the experts from Eternal Chaotic World to wander didn't diminish even though 3,000 years had passed. There was a continuous appearance of multiple opportunities. There were many amazing ones too. It even stirred up many battles and countless experts fought over it. However, the occurrence of battles in order to get opportunities and treasures was only right and proper. All in all, it wasn't too drastic of an incident. Everything was calm. Jian Wushuang understood what had happened in the past 3,000 years briefly, and he didn't ask further. He had already passed down the affairs of Green Fire World to his father, Jian Nantian, Wang Yuan, Su Rou, and the others. Then, Jian Wushuang went to see 3 other people. They were Hall Master Yuan, Hall Master Gu Xian, and Hall Master Nye Yun. The 3 Hall Masters of Lineage of Star were there, in Green Fire World. According to the agreement, besides the 10 Almighties who were in charge of looking after Myriad Noble Region, the other experts from Eternal Chaotic World above Almighty level were prohibited from entering Green Fire World. However, the 3 Hall Masters were special. That was because the 3 of them were Jian Wushuang's men. Hence, Jian Wushuang had already sent a message for Wang Yuan to bring the 3 Hall Masters into Green Fire World when he knew they had arrived. Palace Master, you have finally exited your seclusion. Hall Master Gu Xian was obviously excited to see Jian Wushuang. Palace Master, your aura, did you break through again? Hall Master Yuan's eyes glowed. I did. However, you don't have to announce this. Only the 3 of you need to know this. Jian Wushuang smiled. That's great. The 3 Hall Masters were thrilled with joy. They knew that Jian Wushuang could suppress Emperor God when he was at real God level. Then, as he broke through and leaped on the 7th step of inverse cultivation, his power had definitely improved tremendously. They believed that he could compare to a great emperor favorably with his power. Great emperor. Lineage of Star finally had a great emperor. How could they not be excited? You're tuning in to the Passion Pages YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.